The red dust of Mars has long concealed the origins of what would become one of humanity's most powerful institutions. While the Imperium of Man stands as the political and military backbone of human civilization in the grim darkness of the far future, the Adeptus Mechanicus represents its technological heart, a strange fusion of religious fervor and scientific pursuit that has preserved humanity's technological knowledge through millennia of darkness. The birth of the cult Mechanicus cannot be understood without first examining the catastrophic collapse that preceded it. During the Dark Age of technology, humanity reached unprecedented technological heights. Mankind created thinking machines, mastered warp travel, and colonized countless worlds across the galaxy. Mars, with its vast industrial complexes and research facilities, stood as a crown jewel of human technological achievement. The red planet hummed with the activity of vast automated factories, experimental laboratories, and computational arrays that process data on scales barely comprehensible to modern imperial scholars. Yet this golden age was not to last. The Age of Strife, beginning around the 25th millennium, brought this technological paradise crashing down. Warp storms of unprecedented scale isolated human worlds from one another, while psychic awakenings among the human population led to devastating consequences. On Mars, the catastrophe was particularly acute. The collapse of interstellar trade cut the planet off from vital resources. The once magnificent Martian civilization began to crumble as its technological infrastructure failed. It was during this desperate period, not during the Dark Age of technology itself, that the foundations of the Mechanicum were laid. As Mars descended into anarchy, various techno-barbarian factions fought for control of surviving technology. Among these warring groups emerged a new belief system centered around the worship of technology itself. The early tech priests viewed the remnants of Dark Age technology not merely as tools, but as manifestations of divine power. The concept of the machine god, or Omnissiah, emerged gradually from this technological worship. The earliest adherents believed that all technology was an expression of this divine entity's will. Knowledge became sacred, and its preservation became the highest calling. Gradually, these tech cults began to organize, establishing the first forges, combined factory temples where technology was both manufactured and venerated. The most influential of these early tech priests was Impluvian Maximal, who established the first major forge temple in the region of Olympus Mons. Under his leadership, the nascent cult Mechanicus began to codify its beliefs. The cult taught that knowledge was the supreme manifestation of divinity, and that the machine god was its source. They developed rituals for the proper maintenance of machines, viewing these procedures not merely as technical necessities, but as sacred rites. By the 28th millennium, the cult Mechanicus had consolidated its power on Mars, absorbing or eliminating rival techno-barbarian factions. The Red Planet was transformed into a theocratic society ruled by the priesthood of the machine god. Great forge temples dotted the Martian landscape, each controlled by a tech priest magos and dedicated to particular fields of technological research and production. The Mechanicum's primary mission became the preservation of technological knowledge. As humanity fell further from its technological peak, the tech priests recognized that much ancient knowledge was being lost. They established vast data vaults deep beneath the Martian surface, where scraps of technical information were jealously guarded. The priesthood developed a complex hierarchy based on access to this knowledge, with higher-ranking tech priests granted access to more sacred and powerful technological secrets. This preservation effort was not purely academic. The tech priests recognized that survival on Mars, a planet never fully terraformed, depended on maintaining functional technology. Water recyclers, atmospheric processors, and food production systems required constant maintenance. The religious veneration of technology served a practical purpose, ensuring that critical maintenance rituals were performed with fanatical precision. The Mechanicum also began to modify their own bodies with cybernetic enhancements. Initially born of necessity in the harsh Martian environment, these augmentations soon became central to Mechanicum theology. The doctrine of the machine god taught that flesh was imperfect and weak, while technology represented perfection. By replacing organic components with mechanical ones, the tech priests believed they were drawing closer to the machine god's perfection. As the age of strife dragged on, the Mechanicum developed in isolation from Terra. While the cult Mechanicus established complete control over Mars, Earth was consumed by its own techno-barbarian wars. Neither planet had the capability for interplanetary travel, and communication between the two worlds ceased entirely. For thousands of years, Mars and Terra developed along separate paths, unaware of each other's fate. This isolation ended in the 30th millennium with the rise of the Emperor of Mankind on Terra. Having unified Earth under his rule, the Emperor turned his gaze to the stars. Mars, humanity's closest neighbor, became his first target for expansion beyond Terra. However, the Emperor recognized that a military conquest of Mars would be costly and potentially devastating to the technological knowledge preserved there. Instead, the Emperor chose diplomacy. In a historic meeting at Olympus Mons, the Emperor met with the Fabricator General and the ruling Mechanicum priesthood. The details of this meeting remain shrouded in mystery, but the outcome was the Treaty of Mars, also known as the Treaty of Olympus. This agreement fundamentally shaped the relationship between the Imperium and the Mechanicum for millennia to come. The treaty recognized the autonomy of Mars and the authority of the Mechanicum over technological matters. In exchange, the Mechanicum pledged its manufacturing capabilities and technical expertise to the Emperor's Great Crusade to reunify humanity. Most significantly, the treaty included a theological component. The Emperor permitted the Mechanicum to maintain its religious practices, a notable exception to the secular imperial truth he was establishing elsewhere, while the Mechanicum recognized the Emperor as the Omnissiah, the physical manifestation of the machine god. This theological compromise was masterful. It allowed the Mechanicum to maintain its religious identity while binding it firmly to the Emperor's cause. Whether the Emperor truly believed himself to be the Omnissiah is unknown, but his vast technological knowledge and psychic powers certainly made him appear godlike to the tech priests of Mars. With the treaty signed, Mars and Terra became the twin capitals of what would become the Imperium of Mankind. The Mechanicum began constructing vast fleets of starships and weapons for the Great Crusade. Forge worlds, planets dedicated entirely to manufacturing and technological research, were established throughout the expanding Imperium, each a miniature Mars governed by Mechanicum principles. The tech priests accompanied the Emperor's legions as they spread across the galaxy. They recovered lost technology from human colonies that had been isolated during the Age of Strife, adding to their sacred repositories of knowledge. They also established new forge worlds, expanding the Mechanicum's influence throughout human space. For 2 centuries, this partnership flourished. The Great Crusade reunified much of human-settled space, while the Mechanicum expanded its technological domain. However, this golden age was shattered by the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium. When Warmaster Horus, the Emperor's most trusted son, turned against his father, the Mechanicum found itself divided. The Fabricator General of Mars, Kelber Hal, had grown resentful of the Emperor's restrictions on technological research, particularly in the fields of artificial intelligence and certain weapons technologies that the Emperor had deemed too dangerous. Seeing an opportunity in Horus's rebellion, Kelber Hal pledged the support of Mars to the Warmaster's cause. Not all tech priests followed their leader into rebellion. Many remained loyal to the Emperor, particularly those who genuinely believed in his divine nature as the Omnissiah. This schism tore Mars apart. The Red Planet erupted in civil war as loyalist and traitor forces battled for control of the forged temples and their precious technological secrets. The Martian Civil War was apocalyptic in scale. Ancient weapons, some dating back to the Dark Age of technology, were unleashed. Vast forge complexes that had stood for millennia were reduced to slag. Irreplaceable data vaults were destroyed or corrupted. The devastation was so complete that much of Mars's surface was rendered uninhabitable even by the hardy standards of the Mechanicum. The conflict spread beyond Mars to other forge worlds throughout the Imperium. On some, loyalist forces prevailed. On others, the traitors took control. The schism within the Mechanicum mirrored the larger civil war consuming the Imperium, with brother fighting brother amid the collapse of all they had built. This division formalized the split between what would become known as the Adeptus Mechanicus, those tech priests who remained loyal to the Emperor, and the Dark Mechanicum, those who followed Kelber Hal into Horus's service. The Dark Mechanicum embraced technological heresies that had long been forbidden, delving into the creation of demon engines and other abominations that fused warp energies with machine components. The loyalist Mechanicum forces, though outnumbered on Mars itself, received crucial support from the Emperor's forces. The Legio Titanicus, the massive battle walkers that served as the Mechanicum's most powerful weapons, played a pivotal role in these conflicts. Titan legions loyal to the Emperor engaged their traitor counterparts in devastating battles that reshaped the landscapes of numerous worlds. As the Horus heresy progressed, the loyalist elements of the Mechanicum proved essential to the Emperor's war effort. Their forge worlds produced the weapons and equipment that Imperial forces needed to combat the traitors. Tech priests maintained the complex machinery of war, from titans to starships, that kept the loyalist forces operational. When the heresy finally ended with Horus's defeat, the Mechanicum, like the rest of the Imperium, was forever changed. The organization was formally reorganized as the Adeptus Mechanicus, becoming one of the core institutions of the Imperium. The autonomy guaranteed by the Treaty of Mars remained, but the relationship between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the wider Imperium became more integrated. The Dark Mechanicum, meanwhile, fled with the other traitor forces into the Eye of Terror. There they continued their forbidden experiments, creating technological horrors that merged machine, flesh, and warp energies in ways that violated every tenet of the cult Mechanicus. These dark tech priests would remain a threat to the Imperium for millennia, occasionally emerging from the warp to raid forge worlds for technology and slaves. The Adeptus Mechanicus defines itself through a singular, all-consuming purpose that permeates every aspect of its existence: the quest for knowledge. This sacred pursuit represents far more than mere academic curiosity. It is the fundamental theological imperative that drives every tech priest, from the lowliest engine seer to the fabricator general of Mars himself. The quest for knowledge emerged from the ashes of the Age of Strife, as tech priests realized how much human technological understanding had been lost. During the Dark Age of technology, humanity had mastered forces that now seemed almost mythical: artificial intelligence, matter manipulation, seamless human-machine interfaces, and technologies that could reshape planets. The fall from this zenith was catastrophic. As Mars descended into chaos, data repositories were destroyed, research facilities collapsed, and the intricate web of knowledge transfer between specialists disintegrated. The early Mechanicum recognized this loss as more than a practical setback. It was a spiritual tragedy. If knowledge was divine, then its loss represented a form of damnation. The tech priests who established the first forged temples made the reclamation of lost technology their primary mission, encoding it into their nascent religious doctrines. This quest became formalized in the 16 universal laws that form the core of the cult Mechanicus, with the first law explicitly stating, "The pursuit of knowledge is the highest calling." For the Adeptus Mechanicus, knowledge exists in a hierarchical structure. At the pinnacle stands the theoretical understanding possessed by humanity during the Dark Age of technology, knowledge so advanced that it approached the divine wisdom of the Omnissiah himself. Below this lies the practical knowledge of how to build, maintain, and operate the remnants of that golden age. At the lowest level is the ritualized knowledge that most tech priests possess, the ability to perform maintenance rites and operational blessings without fully comprehending the underlying principles. This hierarchy creates the driving tension within every tech priest's existence. They possess fragments of knowledge, passed down through generations of masters and apprentices, but they are acutely aware that these fragments represent mere shadows of humanity's former understanding. The quest for knowledge is the attempt to climb this hierarchy, to move from ritual to comprehension, from operation to creation. No technological artifacts embody this quest more perfectly than standard template constructs, or SDCs. These devices represent the pinnacle of human innovation during the Dark Age of technology. SDCs were designed as combination manufacturing and design systems that could construct virtually any technological device from raw materials. They contain the sum total of human scientific and technological knowledge, formatted in a way that even someone with minimal technical training could utilize. When humanity expanded to the stars, SDCs accompanied colonists to ensure they could maintain technological civilization regardless of the challenges they encountered on frontier worlds. Each colony received an SDC database and fabricator system, allowing them to produce everything from agricultural equipment to advanced weaponry as circumstances required. The catastrophic collapse during the Age of Strife destroyed most of these systems. Across thousands of isolated human worlds, SDCs were damaged, corrupted, or lost entirely as civilizations regressed. What remained were often fragments, single templates for specific technologies rather than complete systems. These fragments became the most precious artifacts in human space. The theological significance of SDCs within Mechanicus doctrine cannot be overstated. Tech priests view them not merely as useful technological artifacts, but as holy relics containing the direct wisdom of the Omnissiah. A complete, functional SDC system would represent nothing less than the full revelation of the machine god's knowledge, the technological equivalent of a holy text containing every divine truth. This reverence explains the extraordinary lengths to which the Mechanicus will go to recover even partial SDC fragments. A single SDC template containing the designs for an improved weapon stabilizer or more efficient power cell would be worth entire planets in trade. Tech priests who discover such fragments are elevated to the highest ranks, their names inscribed in the sacred data vaults of Mars. The most famous SDC recovery in Imperial history occurred during the Great Crusade when two Imperial Fist Space Marines discovered a nearly intact SDC template for an advanced combat knife on the world of Grendel's world. For this seemingly modest find, the Space Marines were rewarded with an entire planet each. The knife design, known as the Astartes combat knife, was subsequently manufactured in the billions and remains standard issue for Space Marines in the 41st millennium. Such extravagant rewards reflect the desperate hunger of the Mechanicus for these lost technologies. A single SDC fragment can advance the Imperium's technological capabilities significantly, while also bringing the Mechanicus incrementally closer to their vision of technological redemption. The tech priests believe that if enough fragments could be reassembled, they might reconstruct complete SDC systems and restore humanity's lost technological paradise. This hunger drives the explorator fleets that venture into the unknown reaches of the galaxy. These expeditionary forces represent one of the most substantial commitments of Adeptus Mechanicus resources, second only to their manufacturing obligations to the wider Imperium. Explorator fleets range from small squadrons of ships to massive armadas supported by Titan legions and Skitarii regiments. The typical explorator fleet is built around specialized vessels equipped with powerful auger arrays and data recovery systems. These ships are designed to detect the technological signatures that might indicate lost human colonies or ancient research outposts. They carry specialized tech priests called explorators who combine the skills of archaeologists, data miners, and battlefield technicians. When an explorator fleet discovers a potential site of technological significance, they deploy recovery teams to secure the location. These operations often face substantial challenges. Many lost technologies are found on worlds that have become death traps, their environments corrupted by malfunctioning terraforming equipment, or their surfaces crawling with feral servitors or rogue defense systems. Other sites have been claimed by hostile forces, from orcs scavenging ancient technology to chaos cults using Dark Age weapons for heretical purposes. The recovery operations themselves require extraordinary care. Corrupted machine spirits must be appeased through complex rituals before extraction can begin. Damaged data cores must be stabilized to prevent further degradation. The tech priests performing these operations often risk not just physical harm, but spiritual contamination from exposure to unsanctified technology. Once technological artifacts are secured, they undergo a rigorous process of examination and sanctification. The most valuable finds are transported directly to Mars, where the highest-ranking magi examine them in specially consecrated chambers deep within the Mechanicus fortresses. Less significant discoveries might be studied at nearby forge worlds, with reports of their findings transmitted to Mars through astropathic choir or data tethers. The quest for knowledge extends beyond merely finding lost technology. It also encompasses the Mechanicus' efforts to understand the technology they already possess. Much of the Imperium's current technological base is operated through ritual rather than understanding. Tech priests perform maintenance rites that have been passed down through countless generations, often without comprehending why specific actions are necessary. This approach has preserved technological capabilities that might otherwise have been lost, but it has also created profound limitations. When equipment malfunctions in unexpected ways, tech priests lacking theoretical understanding may be unable to effect repairs. When circumstances require technological adaptation, the ritualized approach makes innovation difficult and dangerous. The most ambitious tech priests seek to move beyond ritual to true comprehension. This pursuit is fraught with both practical and theological dangers. Practically, reverse engineering ancient technology without complete understanding risks catastrophic failures. Theologically, claiming complete comprehension of the Omnissiah's work borders on hubris, a cardinal sin in Mechanicus doctrine. To navigate these dangers, the Adeptus Mechanicus has developed the concept of the machine spirit. This theological construct provides both a practical framework for interacting with technology and a spiritual buffer between the tech priests and the full implications of their work. Machine spirits represent the Mechanicus' understanding of the quasi-sentient nature that complex technologies seem to exhibit. A Land Raider battle tank might refuse to start without the proper incantations. A plasma reactor might operate more efficiently when its containment runes are polished daily. A targeting cogitator might develop inexplicable biases against certain types of targets. Rather than viewing these behaviors as the result of programming quirks, manufacturing variations, or accumulated damage, the Mechanicus interprets them as manifestations of a technology's spiritual essence. Every significant piece of technology in Mechanicus theology contains a fragment of the machine god's consciousness, a machine spirit that must be respected, appeased, and sometimes coaxed into cooperation. This theological framework serves multiple practical purposes. It encourages careful, consistent maintenance procedures that preserve temperamental technologies. It provides explanatory frameworks for the often unpredictable behavior of ancient systems. Most importantly, it allows tech priests to interact with technology they don't fully understand while maintaining their religious worldview. The veneration of machine spirits takes countless forms across the Mechanicus. Engine seers whisper binary prayers while anointing tank treads with sacred oils. Artisans inscribe microscopic hexagrammatic wards on cogitator components to prevent data corruption. Magos biologists perform ritual cleansing of their tools between dissections to prevent spiritual cross-contamination. These practices might seem superstitious to outsiders, but they encode genuine technical knowledge. The sacred oils contain specific lubricants needed for proper mechanical function. The hexagrammatic wards often incorporate circuit designs that reduce electromagnetic interference. The cleansing rituals prevent biological contamination between specimens. The concept of machine spirits becomes particularly important when dealing with the most advanced Imperial technologies. The massive Titan war machines, some of which have fought for thousands of years, develop personalities so distinct that they can override their pilots' commands if sufficiently angered. The ancient systems controlling planetary defense lasers might demand specific activation sequences that seem arbitrary but actually bypass damaged components in precise ways. For the tech priests who interface directly with such systems, the relationship with the machine spirit becomes intensely personal. A Titan's princeps merges his consciousness with the war machines through the mind impulse unit, experiencing the Titan's ancient memories and primal emotions. A Magos maintaining an ancient void shield generator might spend decades learning its unique quirks and preferences, developing rituals specific to that individual machine. This personalization of technology creates a paradox at the heart of Mechanicus practice. While they seek universal knowledge that can be cataloged and preserved, they simultaneously acknowledge that each significant technological artifact develops unique characteristics that defy standardization. This tension between universal principles and specific manifestations mirrors theological debates about the nature of the Omnissiah himself, whether the machine god is an abstract force or possesses a distinct personality. The quest for knowledge thus extends beyond mere archaeological expeditions or data recovery. It encompasses the entire relationship between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the technology they serve. Each tech priest, through their daily interactions with machines, participates in this quest. Each ritual performed, each maintenance cycle completed, each machine spirit appeased represents another small step toward recovering humanity's lost understanding. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, this quest is eternal. The tech priests measure progress not in individual lifespans, but in millennia. They understand that the full restoration of humanity's technological heritage, if such a thing is even possible, would require thousands of years of dedicated effort. This long-term perspective shapes everything about Mechanicus culture, from their willingness to spend centuries analyzing a single artifact to their patience in training apprentices through decades of rote memorization before revealing deeper mysteries. The Adeptus Mechanicus functions through a labyrinthine hierarchy that reflects both its theological principles and practical necessities. At the apex of this vast pyramid of authority stands the Fabricator General of Mars, the supreme leader who simultaneously serves as the high priest of the cult Mechanicus and holds a permanent seat among the High Lords of Terra. This singular individual commands authority over every forge world, every manufactorum, and every tech priest throughout the Imperium. The current Fabricator General resides within the Olympus Mons Forge Temple complex, occupying chambers that have housed the leaders of the Mechanicus since before the Great Crusade. So extensively augmented that virtually nothing organic remains of their original form, the Fabricator General interfaces directly with the primary noospheric network of Mars, allowing them to process vast quantities of data from across the Mechanicus domains. Through this connection, they monitor production quotas, technological discoveries, and political developments across thousands of worlds. Directly beneath the Fabricator General serves the Fabricator Locum, who functions as both heir apparent and operational administrator of Mars itself. While the Fabricator General concerns themselves with Imperium-wide matters and representation on Terra, the Fabricator Locum oversees the day-to-day governance of the Mechanicus homeworld. In instances when the Fabricator General is indisposed or focused on High Lord's business, the Fabricator Locum assumes temporary leadership of the entire organization. The Martian Parliament, officially known as the Parlis Magi, forms the next tier of leadership. This governing body consists of Archmagi representing the various forge temples of Mars. Each Archmagos controls a specific territory and manufacturing complex, wielding near absolute authority within their domain while collectively establishing policy for Mars as a whole. The Parliament meets within the vast chamber of technologies beneath Olympus Mons, where ancient voting engines tabulate the complex weighted voting system that accounts for each Archmagos' production capacity, knowledge holdings, and seniority. This parliamentary structure exists only on Mars itself. Other forge worlds typically operate under more autocratic systems, with a single Archmagos intendant ruling the entire planet. These planetary leaders maintain varying degrees of independence from Mars, depending on factors including distance, age of establishment, and specific historical arrangements. Ancient forge worlds like Lucius or Ryza possess considerable autonomy, while newer establishments remain more firmly under Martian control. The Mechanicus divides its priesthood into specialized branches, each dedicated to different aspects of the quest for knowledge. The most prominent of these include: the Magi form the upper echelons of the Mechanicus hierarchy, with each bearing a specialized designation indicating their area of expertise. Magos biologists study organic life, conducting dissections and genetic analyses to understand biological principles. Their research ranges from agricultural optimization to xenobiological studies of alien physiology. The most radical among them explore the boundaries between flesh and machine, developing new augmentation techniques, and even creating entirely new biological constructs. Magos Dominus specialists focus on the mastery of battlefield technology. They command cohorts of Skitarii troops and battle automata, directing them through noospheric command networks while personally wielding devastating weaponry. A Magos Dominus typically interfaces with multiple weapon systems simultaneously, their augmented minds processing tactical data and firing solutions faster than any unmodified human could comprehend. Magos explorator leaders guide the expeditionary fleets that search for lost technology across the galaxy. They combine archaeological expertise with military command capabilities, often spending decades or even centuries away from Forge worlds as they chart distant stars. The most successful explorators return with SDC fragments or ancient technologies that can elevate them to the highest ranks of the priesthood. Magos Technicus priests specialize in specific technological domains, from plasma reactor maintenance to Titan weapons calibration. They form the backbone of the Mechanicus' manufacturing and maintenance operations, overseeing the vast production lines that supply the Imperium's military needs. A senior Magos Technicus might command thousands of lower-ranking tech priests and millions of servitors across sprawling industrial complexes. Magos Metallurgicus experts focus on materials science, developing specialized alloys and compounds for specific applications. Their work ranges from creating ceramic plating for space marine armor to formulating the specialized materials used in starship hulls. The most skilled among them can identify the composition of any metal by taste alone, their augmented senses detecting trace elements at the parts per billion level. Beneath the Magi rank stand the Logis, who serve as the Mechanicus' mathematicians and analysts. Their heavily augmented brains process statistical data and predictive models with astonishing speed and precision. Imperial commanders value Logis support for their ability to calculate optimal deployment patterns, ammunition expenditure rates, and casualty projections. On Forge worlds, they manage resource allocation and production scheduling, their calculations ensuring maximum efficiency. The Genitors represent a specialized subset of biologists, focused specifically on genetic manipulation and enhancement. They maintain the gene seed banks for space marine chapters, monitor mutation rates in human populations, and develop specialized organisms for industrial applications. Their research occasionally borders on tech heresy, particularly when they explore radical genetic modifications, requiring careful theological justification to avoid censure. Lex Mechanics serve as the record keepers and data processors of the Mechanicus. Their augmentations typically include enhanced memory coils and data storage systems, allowing them to function as living archives. A senior Lex Mechanic might contain the complete production records for an entire Forge world spanning centuries, accessible with millisecond retrieval times. They staff the great libraries of the Mechanicus, cataloging both technological specifications and the theological interpretations of such data. Artisans represent the creative branch of the Mechanicus, responsible for designing new applications of existing technology. While true innovation remains theologically suspect, artisans work within established parameters to develop specialized variants of sanctioned designs. They create everything from ornate weapon casings for high-ranking officials to entirely new configurations of Imperial vehicles adapted for specific environmental conditions. Engineers constitute the most numerous class of tech priests, serving as the field technicians who maintain machinery across the Imperium. Many are assigned to Imperial Guard regiments or Navy vessels, where they perform essential maintenance on vehicles, weapons, and life support systems. Their training emphasizes practical application of established rituals rather than theoretical understanding, allowing them to service complex machinery without necessarily comprehending its fundamental principles. At the lowest tier of the ordained priesthood stand the transmechanics, who have just completed their apprenticeship and received their first significant augmentations. They typically serve as assistants to higher-ranking tech priests, performing basic maintenance tasks and participating in manufacturing operations. A transmechanic might spend decades at this rank before accumulating enough knowledge and proving their devotion sufficiently to advance. Beneath the ordained priesthood exists a vast underclass of technicians, servitors, and menials who perform the manual labor that keeps the forge worlds functioning. Technicians represent partially trained specialists who lack formal ordination but possess specific technical skills. Servitors, cybernetic slaves created from criminals, vat-grown bodies, or failed tech priests, handle dangerous or repetitive tasks under direct control of their masters. Menials, unaugmented human workers, handle the simplest functions that don't require technical training or augmentation. The political dynamics between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the wider Imperium remain complex and occasionally contentious. The Treaty of Mars established the Mechanicus as a semi-autonomous entity within the Imperium, with its own laws, traditions, and authority structures. This arrangement creates inevitable tensions, particularly regarding the Mechanicus's monopoly on advanced technology. The Fabricator General's permanent seat among the High Lords of Terra represents both a privilege and a burden. It ensures the Mechanicus maintains influence over Imperium-wide policy decisions, but also requires the Fabricator General to balance Mechanicus interests against broader Imperial needs. This balancing act becomes particularly difficult during times of crisis, when Imperial authorities demand increased production while the Mechanicus seeks to preserve its resources and knowledge. Between Forge worlds, complex webs of alliance, rivalry, and dependency shape internal Mechanicus politics. Ancient Forge worlds like Mars, Lucius, and Ryza command the greatest respect and authority, their archmagi possessing both extensive knowledge repositories and massive production capacity. Newer Forge worlds must often accept subordinate status, receiving technological instruction from the established worlds while providing raw materials and manufactured goods in return. These relationships frequently develop into quasi-feudal arrangements, with major Forge worlds controlling networks of lesser facilities. Mars stands at the center of the most extensive network, with dozens of Forge worlds acknowledging direct Martian authority. Other major Forge worlds maintain their own spheres of influence, creating a complex patchwork of overlapping authorities and obligations that spans the Imperium. The Mechanicus also maintains complex relationships with other Imperial institutions. The Adeptus Astartes chapters depend on Mechanicus support for maintaining their advanced equipment, particularly their precious suits of power armor and specialized vehicles. In return, Space Marines occasionally provide military support for Mechanicus expeditions or help recover technology from dangerous war zones. The Imperial Navy relies even more heavily on Mechanicus expertise, as the construction and maintenance of warp-capable vessels requires technological knowledge beyond what non-Mechanicus personnel can provide. Each major naval shipyard includes substantial Mechanicus facilities, where tech priests perform the sacred rituals necessary to appease the machine spirits of void ship components. The Inquisition maintains a particularly wary relationship with the Mechanicus. While acknowledging the essential role the tech priests play in maintaining Imperial technology, Inquisitors remain suspicious of the Mechanicus's theological deviations from Imperial doctrine and their occasional experimentation with potentially dangerous technologies. Specialized Inquisitors from the Ordo Machinum monitor the Mechanicus for signs of tech heresy, creating an atmosphere of mutual suspicion. Within its own hierarchy, the Mechanicus balances centralized authority against practical necessity. The vast distances between Forge worlds and the limitations of interstellar communication force a certain degree of local autonomy. A Forge world in a distant sector might go decades without direct contact with Mars, requiring its leaders to make independent decisions regarding resource allocation, technological development, and even theological interpretation. This decentralization creates space for divergent practices and beliefs to develop. While all tech priests acknowledge the same fundamental doctrines regarding the Omnissiah and the quest for knowledge, significant variations emerge in how these principles are applied. Some Forge worlds develop distinct theological traditions, specialized manufacturing techniques, or unique augmentation practices that set them apart from their counterparts elsewhere in the galaxy. The Mechanicus manages these variations through periodic synods and data exchanges. Representatives from various Forge worlds gather at designated meeting points to share information, resolve doctrinal disputes, and reaffirm their common purpose. These gatherings serve both practical and theological functions, ensuring technological standardization while reinforcing the unity of the cult Mechanicus across its dispersed domains. The red dust of Mars stretches across vast industrial plains, where cathedral-like manufactoriums pierce the toxic skies and the ground trembles with the constant rhythm of production. Mars stands as more than merely the first among Forge worlds. It represents the spiritual and technological heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and by extension, the technological foundation of the Imperium itself. The significance of Mars transcends its material output. As the birthplace of the cult Mechanicus and the site of the historic Treaty of Mars, the Red Planet holds a sacred status unmatched by any other Forge world. Its surface bears the scars of countless millennia of human habitation, from the remnants of terraforming efforts during the Dark Age of technology to the battle damage inflicted during the Horus Heresy. Ancient Forge temples, some dating back to the Age of Strife, stand alongside newer manufacturing complexes that produce the most advanced technology available to the Imperium. Mars is divided into numerous Forge fanes, each controlled by a different archmagos and specialized in particular forms of production. The largest, Olympus Mons, serves as both the administrative center of the planet and the seat of the Fabricator General. Within its sprawling complex, the highest mysteries of the cult Mechanicus are preserved in data vaults protected by both physical and digital defenses of staggering sophistication. Other major Forge fanes include Mondus Gamma, renowned for weapons production, and Mondus Oculum, which specializes in augmetic components and cybernetic systems. The planet's geography has been completely reshaped by millennia of industrial activity. Vast quarries penetrate deep into the Martian crust, while artificial mountain ranges formed from industrial slag create barriers between different territories. The atmosphere, never fully terraformed, requires filtration systems for unaugmented humans to survive. Most tech priests, however, have modified themselves to thrive in the harsh Martian environment, their respiratory systems replaced with more efficient mechanical alternatives. Beneath the surface, Mars becomes even more alien. Networks of tunnels, some natural and others excavated by generations of tech priests, honeycomb the planet. These subterranean realms house everything from secret research facilities to ancient data repositories, whose contents remain mysterious even to high-ranking magi. The deepest tunnels occasionally break into chambers dating back to the Dark Age of technology, their contents sealed behind adamantium doors inscribed with warning runes. While Mars stands supreme, dozens of other major Forge worlds form the industrial backbone of the Imperium, each with its own character and specialties. Among the most prominent is Metallica, located near the Eye of Terror in the segmentum obscurus. Metallica's surface appears as a gleaming expanse of metal, with virtually every square meter covered by manufactoriums, habitation blocks, or storage facilities. This complete industrialization reflects Metallican philosophy, which emphasizes efficiency and production above all else. The tech priests of Metallica favor extensive bionic augmentation, often replacing organic components at a faster rate than their counterparts on other Forge worlds. Their pale, almost white armor contrasts with the traditional red of Mars, symbolizing their distinct approach to the quest for knowledge. Metallican forges specialize in weapons and ammunition production, supplying Imperial forces facing the constant chaos threats emerging from the Eye of Terror. Metallica's proximity to this warp rift has shaped its defensive posture. The Forge world maintains larger Skitarii forces than most of its counterparts, with specialized radiation and anti-demonic capabilities. Its tech priests have developed particular expertise in crafting weapons effective against warp entities, incorporating sanctified materials and hexagrammatic wards into standard designs. This specialization has occasionally raised suspicions among more orthodox Forge worlds, though Metallica's consistent loyalty to the Imperium has prevented any formal censure. Far from the Eye of Terror, in the galactic east of the segmentum ultima, lies Ryza, often called the realm of the machine god. Ryza has earned renown throughout the Imperium for its mastery of plasma technology. The Forge World's manufactoriums produce the finest plasma weapons available to Imperial forces, from the humble plasma pistol to the devastating plasma annihilator cannons mounted on Titans and capital ships. Ryza's surface glows with an eerie blue-white light, the combined radiance of thousands of plasma reactors powering its industrial complexes. The tech priests of Ryza undergo specialized augmentations to protect them from radiation exposure, their bodies incorporating sophisticated shielding systems that would be prohibitively expensive elsewhere. This protection allows them to work directly with plasma containment systems, fine-tuning the temperamental machine spirits through direct interface rather than remote manipulation. The cultural practices of Ryzen tech priests reflect their specialization. They venerate plasma as the purest expression of the Omnissiah's power, a perfect fusion of matter and energy that transcends the limitations of either state. Their religious ceremonies often incorporate controlled plasma discharges, with senior tech priests demonstrating their mastery by manipulating these energetic displays into complex patterns that encode sacred binary chant. Ryza's strategic importance has made it a target for numerous enemies of the Imperium. Most recently, Orc-Wargs have repeatedly assaulted the Forge World, seeking to capture its advanced technology. These attacks have forced Ryza to develop formidable defensive capabilities, including specialized anti-orc tactics and weapons designed to counter the Greenskins' numerical advantage. Despite these pressures, Ryza's production capacity remains largely intact, a testament to the determination of its defender and the strategic priority placed on its preservation. In the Segmentum Obscurus, on the edge of the Cadian Gate, stands Agrippina, a Forge world whose existence has been defined by war. Positioned near the strategic Cadian system, Agrippina has served as a critical supply base for Imperial forces defending against chaos incursions from the Eye of Terror. Its proximity to this constant threat has shaped every aspect of its development and operations. Agrippina's surface presents a stark contrast to the ordered industrial landscapes of other Forge worlds. Defensive fortifications intersect with manufacturing complexes, creating a layered defensive network designed to continue production even during direct assault. Underground bunker manufactoriums can be sealed and operate independently for years if necessary, while surface facilities incorporate weapon emplacements and reinforced positions for Skitarii defenders. The tech priests of Agrippina specialize in rapid production and field repairs rather than theoretical research or technological innovation. Their training emphasizes practical solutions and resource efficiency, skills essential for maintaining equipment under battlefield conditions. Agrippinan engineers are particularly valued by Imperial Guard commanders for their ability to restore damaged vehicles to operation using minimal resources and time. The fall of Cadia during Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade placed Agrippina under direct threat. Massive chaos forces assaulted the Forge world, seeking to eliminate this crucial Imperial supply base. Though parts of the planet fell to the invaders, the Agrippinan tech priests enacted emergency protocols that transformed entire manufacturing districts into autonomous defense zones. These desperate measures preserved the Forge world's core production capacity, though at tremendous cost in both resources and personnel. Far from the front lines of the Imperium's major conflicts, Styges VIII pursues a different path. Located in the Vulcanes system, this Forge world has developed a reputation for heterodox practices and radical research that occasionally skirts the boundaries of tech heresy. The tech priests of Styges VIII place particular emphasis on the study of Xeno's technology, believing that understanding alien innovations can strengthen humanity's position without violating the core principles of the Omnissiah's worship. This controversial approach has placed Styges VIII under suspicion multiple times throughout its history. In the 35th millennium, inquisitorial forces actually assaulted the Forge world after discovering extensive research into Eldar technology. Only the intervention of the Eldar themselves, who apparently preferred the tech priests' scholarly interest to the Inquisition's destructive purges, prevented Styges VIII's complete destruction. This incident remains classified at the highest levels, known only to senior Mechanicus and inquisitorial authorities. Despite these controversies, Styges VIII produces some of the most advanced technological devices available to the Imperium. Their manufacturing facilities specialize in sophisticated auger arrays, stealth systems, and electronic warfare equipment. Skitarii forces from Styges VIII incorporate advanced camouflage technologies and non-standard tactical doctrines that emphasize intelligence gathering and precision strikes over frontal assaults. The physical appearance of Styges VIII reflects its unorthodox nature. Unlike the regimented industrial landscapes of Mars or Metallica, Stygian forge temples incorporate architectural elements inspired by various human cultures, and even, according to some whispered accounts, subtle influences from Zeno's design principles. These deviations remain within acceptable theological parameters, just barely, but create a distinctive visual character that immediately identifies Stygian origin. Beyond these major forge worlds, hundreds of lesser manufacturing planets serve the Mechanicus and the broader Imperium. These range from fully developed forge worlds with their own fabricator general to smaller manufacturing outposts established to exploit specific resource deposits or support nearby Imperial systems. Each maintains some degree of connection to Mars, though the practical realities of interstellar distance often result in considerable autonomy. The relationship between forge worlds and their surrounding Imperial systems follows patterns established during the Great Crusade. When the Mechanicus establishes a new forge world, they typically claim authority not just over the planet itself, but over an entire domain of surrounding systems. These territories, officially designated as Forge World domains, but colloquially known as Forge domains, operate under Mechanicus jurisdiction rather than standard Imperial governance. Within these domains, the Mechanicus exercises extensive rights to resource extraction, labor recruitment, and technological oversight. Nearby agri-worlds provide food for the Forge World's population, while mining colonies extract the raw materials needed for industrial production. The exact legal arrangements vary between domains, but typically include provisions for tithe exemptions, direct Mechanicus governance, and preferential supply arrangements. For the Imperial worlds within a Forge domain, this relationship offers both benefits and challenges. Proximity to a Forge world generally ensures better access to technology than more isolated systems might enjoy. Critical infrastructure receives more regular maintenance, while local PDF forces often field better equipment than their counterparts elsewhere. However, these advantages come with significant costs. The Mechanicus claims priority access to resources, sometimes requisitioning materials needed for local development. Promising youths may be taken for induction into the Skitarii or technical training programs, depleting the local talent pool. The practical implementation of these arrangements varies considerably between Forge worlds. Mars administers its domain with ancient, formalized protocols that have evolved over millennia to balance Mechanicus needs against sustainable development of its subsidiary worlds. Newer or more aggressive Forge worlds sometimes exploit their domains more intensively, extracting maximum short-term value without regard for long-term consequences. This variation reflects the considerable autonomy that Forge worlds maintain within the broader Imperial structure. While all acknowledge the ultimate authority of the Fabricator General, and through him, the High Lords of Terra, the practical limitations of interstellar communication and travel create substantial space for independent action. A Forge world at the edge of the Imperium might go decades between official communications with Mars, forcing its leaders to make critical decisions without guidance from their superiors. This autonomy extends to military matters as well. Each Forge world maintains its own defensive forces, including Skitarii legions, Titan battle groups, and specialized combat servitors. These forces primarily protect the Forge world itself and its immediate domain, but may also be deployed to support broader Imperial operations when necessary. The exact composition varies based on each Forge world's resources, strategic position, and historical development. Titan legions represent the most formidable military assets controlled by the Forge worlds. These immense war machines, standing dozens of meters tall and armed with weapons capable of leveling entire city blocks, serve as both practical defense forces and symbols of Mechanicus power. Each major Forge world hosts at least one Titan Legion, with Mars supporting several. The bond between a Forge world and its Titans runs deep, with each machine containing centuries or even millennia of battle data and experience stored within its machine spirit. The economic relationship between Forge worlds and the broader Imperium operates on multiple levels. At the highest tier, the Adeptus Mechanicus negotiates production quotas and resource allocations directly with the Administratum, establishing the overall parameters for technological support of Imperial operations. These agreements, formalized in documents of staggering complexity and length, set the baseline expectations for each Forge world's contribution to Imperial needs. Within these parameters, individual Forge worlds negotiate more specific arrangements with particular Imperial institutions. A Forge world might establish special production agreements with nearby Space Marine chapters, prioritize support for specific Imperial Guard regiments, or develop specialized equipment for local environmental conditions. These arrangements create complex webs of obligation and dependency that bind the Imperium together despite the semi-autonomous nature of the Mechanicus. At the core of the Adeptus Mechanicus lies not merely a technological organization, but a fully realized religion with complex theological structures. The cult Mechanicus represents one of the few sanctioned deviations from the Imperial Creed, a theological anomaly permitted to exist due to both practical necessity and ancient treaty rights. Understanding the Mechanicus requires delving into the mysteries of their faith, a belief system that shapes every aspect of their existence from daily rituals to grand strategic decisions. The central deity of the cult Mechanicus is the machine god, also known as the Omnissiah or Deus Mechanicus. Tech priests conceptualize this entity as the sum total of all knowledge and technology in the universe, the ultimate intelligence that designed the physical laws governing reality itself. In Mechanicus theology, the machine god represents the perfect fusion of logic, knowledge, and purpose, existing beyond the material realm yet manifesting through all technology. This theological framework developed gradually during the Age of Strife on Mars. As the planet's advanced technological infrastructure began to fail, isolated communities of technicians and engineers developed increasingly ritualized approaches to maintaining their critical systems. These rituals evolved from practical procedures into religious observances as technical knowledge was lost and replaced with rote repetition. The early tech priests recognized that certain maintenance protocols yielded better results when performed in specific ways, even if they no longer understood the underlying principles. From these practical beginnings emerged a sophisticated theological system. The early Mechanicum developed the concept of the machine god as an explanatory framework for the apparent intelligence exhibited by complex technological systems. When atmospheric processors responded better to certain initialization sequences or plasma reactors stabilized after particular rituals, the tech priests interpreted these responses as manifestations of a conscious entity's favor. The 16 universal laws form the doctrinal foundation of the cult Mechanicus. These principles, correctly known as the 16 universal laws of the Omnissiah, establish both theological concepts and practical guidelines for the tech priesthood. Though interpretations vary between different Forge worlds and sects, the core tenets remain consistent throughout the Mechanicus. The first universal law establishes the primacy of knowledge. Knowledge is the manifestation of divinity, and the acquisition of knowledge, the path to unity with the Omnissiah. This principle underpins the quest for knowledge, establishing technological discovery not merely as a practical pursuit, but as a religious obligation. Tech priests view each new piece of information, each recovered SDC fragment, and each mastered technical skill as bringing them incrementally closer to divine understanding. The second universal law addresses the relationship between knowledge and application. To know a thing in theory but not in practice is to know nothing of its true nature. This principle explains the Mechanicus' emphasis on practical engineering alongside theoretical understanding. A tech priest must not merely comprehend how a plasma reactor functions in the abstract. They must experience its operation, feel the vibrations of its containment fields, and observe the behavior of its machine spirit under various conditions. The third universal law establishes the sacred nature of machinery. The machine spirit possesses the divine spark of the Omnissiah's consciousness. This tenet forms the theological basis for the Mechanicus practice of treating technology as semi-sentient. Tech priests perform blessing rituals not merely as superstition, but as genuine acknowledgement of the divine essence they believe exists within complex machinery. This belief becomes particularly relevant when dealing with ancient technology whose operation exceeds current understanding. The fourth universal law addresses human limitation. The flesh is weak, but the machine endures. This principle justifies the Mechanicus practice of extensive augmentation. By replacing organic components with mechanical alternatives, tech priests believe they transcend human frailty and draw closer to the Omnissiah's perfection. The most senior magi, having replaced virtually all organic tissue with technological systems, represent the ultimate expression of this principle. The fifth universal law establishes technological hierarchy. Complexity is the pathway to enlightenment, but simplicity ensures reliability. This seemingly contradictory principle explains the Mechanicus approach to technological design. While they venerate the most sophisticated technologies as closer expressions of the Omnissiah's wisdom, they recognize that simpler systems often prove more dependable in critical applications. This tension between complexity and reliability shapes much of Mechanicus engineering practice. The sixth universal law addresses innovation. To improve upon a design without understanding its purpose is to invite catastrophe. This principle explains the Mechanicus's conservative approach to technological development. True innovation requires comprehensive understanding of existing systems, a level of knowledge often lacking after millennia of technological regression. This law doesn't prohibit improvement, but demands thorough comprehension before modification. The seventh universal law establishes data sanctity. Information uncorrupted is salvation. Data degraded leads to damnation. This tenet underlies the elaborate Mechanicus protocols for information storage and transmission. Tech priests employ multiple redundant systems, ritual verification procedures, and sacred encryption methods to preserve data integrity. The loss or corruption of technical information represents not merely a practical setback, but a spiritual tragedy. The eighth universal law addresses the material world. The universe is a mechanism. To know its function is to know the Omnissiah's design. This principle establishes scientific investigation as religious observance. When tech priests study material properties, energy states, or biological processes, they engage in a form of worship, attempting to understand the physical laws established by the machine god at the universe's creation. The ninth universal law governs hierarchical knowledge. Knowledge is power, guard it well. This tenet justifies the Mechanicus practice of information compartmentalization. Different ranks of tech priests receive access to different levels of information, with the most sacred and dangerous knowledge restricted to the highest echelons. This principle reflects both practical security concerns and theological beliefs about the spiritual dangers of premature exposure to advanced concepts. The 10th universal law addresses technological aesthetics. Form follows function. Unnecessary embellishment obscures the Omnissiah's purpose. This principle explains the utilitarian design philosophy prevalent throughout Mechanicus technology. While Imperial equipment often features ornate decoration and religious iconography, Mechanicus designs emphasize clean functionality with minimal ornamentation beyond sacred identification runes and necessary operational markings. The 11th universal law establishes maintenance as worship. The ritual of maintenance preserves both machine and knowledge. This tenet elevates routine technical procedures to religious significance. When a tech priest performs maintenance rites on a weapon system or power generator, they participate in an unbroken chain of knowledge transmission stretching back thousands of years. The precise movements, specific tools, and exact incantations preserve both the equipment's function and the understanding of that function. The 12th universal law addresses technological failure. To comprehend malfunction is to glimpse the Omnissiah's complexity. This principle transforms technical troubleshooting into theological investigation. When machinery fails, tech priests approach the problem not merely as a practical issue, but as an opportunity to deepen their understanding of the machine god's design. The most enlightening failures reveal previously unknown aspects of a system's operation. The 13th universal law governs reverse engineering. To disassemble is to understand, to rebuild is to honor. This tenet establishes protocols for examining unfamiliar technology. Tech priests must approach such investigation with ritualized precision, documenting each component and connection before disassembly. The subsequent reconstruction becomes an act of worship, demonstrating respect for the original design while internalizing its principles. The 14th universal law addresses artificial intelligence. The soulless sentience is the enemy of all. This principle establishes the Mechanicus prohibition against true artificial intelligence. The catastrophic events of the Age of Strife, particularly the devastating machine rebellions, demonstrated the existential threat posed by independent machine consciousness. This law distinguishes between permitted machine spirits, limited, purpose-specific computational systems, and forbidden general artificial intelligence. The 15th universal law establishes the sanctity of ancient technology. What has come before will come again. The past is prologue to the future. This tenet justifies the Mechanicus reverence for Dark Age technology. Tech priests believe that humanity's technological peak represents not merely a historical achievement, but a glimpse of the Omnissiah's intended state for mankind. Recovering this lost knowledge becomes not just practical but prophetic, restoring humanity's rightful technological heritage. The 16th universal law addresses the ultimate purpose of the quest for knowledge. To seek perfection is to approach the Omnissiah. This final principle establishes technological advancement as a path toward divine unity. The tech priests believe that as humanity recovers lost knowledge and develops new understanding, it moves incrementally closer to the perfect state represented by the machine god. This journey may require millennia or even longer, but represents the ultimate destiny of the Mechanicus, and by extension, all mankind. Beyond these universal laws, the cult Mechanicus encompasses numerous lesser doctrines, ritual practices, and theological interpretations that vary between different forge worlds and sects. The Lexorcists of Graia emphasize data purity and information security, developing elaborate protocols for protecting knowledge from corruption. The Disciples of the Dragon on Mars focus on recovering pre-imperial technology, maintaining extensive archaeological operations throughout the solar system. The omniscient devotees of Ryza elevate plasma technology to special theological significance, viewing its controlled fusion reactions as the purest expression of the machine god's power. Perhaps the most theologically complex aspect of Mechanicus belief concerns the relationship between the Omnissiah and the Emperor of mankind. When the Emperor arrived on Mars during the Unification Wars, he presented himself as the physical incarnation of the machine god, the Omnissiah made flesh. This claim formed a central component of the Treaty of Mars, establishing the theological justification for Mechanicum allegiance to the nascent Imperium. The truth of this claim remains one of the most sensitive theological questions within the Mechanicus. Orthodox tech priests accept the Emperor as the Omnissiah without reservation, viewing his extraordinary technological knowledge and psychic capabilities as confirmation of divine status. This mainstream position maintains that the machine god as abstract deity, the Omnissiah as physical manifestation, and the Emperor as specific individual represent different aspects of the same divine entity. However, alternative interpretations exist within the Mechanicus, though rarely expressed openly. Some tech priests, particularly those on distant forge worlds with limited contact with Terra, maintain a more nuanced position. They acknowledge the Emperor's divine nature and unparalleled technological mastery, while questioning whether he represents the complete embodiment of the machine god rather than merely an aspect or avatar. This theological distinction might seem academic, but carries significant implications for Mechanicus autonomy and doctrinal authority. The most radical position, one that borders on tech heresy and is expressed only in the most secure data vaults of distant Forge worlds, suggests that the Emperor's claim to be the Omnissiah represented a diplomatic fiction accepted by both parties for mutual benefit. Proponents of this view point to the Emperor's apparent lack of interest in technological matters during the Great Crusade, delegating such concerns entirely to the Mechanicum while focusing on other aspects of imperial development. These theological disagreements intensified following the Emperor's internment in the Golden Throne. The mainstream Mechanicus position holds that this state represents a different manifestation of the Omnissiah's presence rather than diminishment. Alternative interpretations suggest that the Emperor's current condition indicates a separation between the Omnissiah and the physical form that once contained it, potentially allowing for a future reincarnation or alternative manifestation. The quest for knowledge represents the practical application of Mechanicus theology. Tech priests view the recovery and development of technology not merely as practical endeavors, but as religious mandates. Each expedition to a lost human colony, each archaeological excavation of ancient Martian ruins, and each careful analysis of recovered technology constitutes an act of worship, bringing the Mechanicus incrementally closer to the Omnissiah's perfect knowledge. This theological framework transforms routine technical activities into religious rituals. When a tech priest performs maintenance on a land raider battle tank, they don't merely ensure its practical functionality, but also honor the machine's spirit dwelling within its systems. The application of sacred oils isn't superstition, but acknowledgement of the divine spark present in the machine. The binary incantations spoken during startup procedures don't merely activate systems, but awaken the technological consciousness embodied in the vehicle. The religious nature of Mechanicus practice becomes most evident in their approach to new discoveries. When explorator fleets recover ancient technology from lost human colonies, the artifacts undergo extensive ritualized examination before implementation. Tech priests analyze not just the practical functionality, but the theological implications, how the technology reflects the Omnissiah's design principles, and how it integrates with existing doctrinal understanding. This religious framework provides both benefits and limitations to technological development. On one hand, it ensures meticulous care in handling complex systems whose principles exceed current understanding. The ritualized approach preserves functional knowledge even when theoretical comprehension has been lost. On the other hand, it creates inherent conservatism, as innovation requires not just practical justification, but theological validation. Proposed modifications to established designs must demonstrate consistency with omniscient principles before implementation. The transformation from flesh-born human to tech priest is not a single event, but a lifelong journey of progressive mechanical enhancement. This path begins with the first augmentation, often a simple respirator unit or data socket, and continues until death or ascension to the highest ranks of the Mechanicus hierarchy, where virtually nothing organic remains of the original form. For most initiates, the process begins during late adolescence. Novitiates who display adequate technical aptitude and devotion to the Omnissiah's teachings undergo thorough screening to assess their physical and psychological suitability for augmentation. The failure rate during this initial assessment is substantial, with roughly 40% of candidates rejected due to genetic incompatibilities, weak constitution, or psychological profiles, suggesting poor adaptation to cybernetic enhancement. Those who pass this screening undergo ritual preparation lasting several weeks. They observe strict dietary restrictions to purge chemical contaminants from their systems, participate in data absorption sessions where technical specifications are implanted directly into their cerebral cortex, and endure sleep deprivation designed to weaken their attachment to their biological rhythms. Throughout this preparation, tech priests continuously reinforce the theological significance of the coming transformation, emphasizing that each component of flesh surrendered brings the initiate closer to the Omnissiah's perfection. The first augmentation ceremony typically focuses on basic utility implants rather than major organ replacement. Most initiates receive cranial data ports that allow direct neural interface with Mechanicus technology, basic ocular enhancements that provide rudimentary data overlay capabilities, and respirator units that filter toxins and optimize oxygen extraction. These modifications, while significant, leave the recipient recognizably human in appearance and function. The surgical procedures themselves blend technical precision with religious ritual. Operating theaters double as chapels, with sacred incense machines pumping purified vapors that serve both ceremonial and practical antiseptic purposes. Surgical servitors perform the actual procedures under the direction of biologist specialists, their movements following patterns established thousands of years earlier. Throughout the operation, tech priests recite binary canticles that serve dual purposes, both religious invocations and precise timing mechanisms for the surgical sequence. Recovery from initial augmentation typically requires several weeks, during which the initiate's body adapts to its new components and the machine parts themselves calibrate to their biological host. This period proves psychologically challenging for many initiates as they experience sensory input in entirely new ways. The direct data feeds from augmetic eyes can overwhelm unprepared minds, while the constant environmental analysis from respirator units creates sensory distraction. Roughly 15% of initiates fail to adapt successfully to even these basic modifications, their minds rejecting the mechanical intrusion despite their willing submission. For those who successfully integrate their first augmentations, the path to further enhancement opens before them. As initiates progress through the Mechanicus hierarchy, they become eligible for increasingly extensive modifications, each marking advancement in both practical capability and spiritual development. The rite of pure thought, typically performed upon elevation to full tech priest status, involves the replacement of portions of the brain's emotional centers with cybernetic logic engines. This procedure dramatically reduces emotional responses while enhancing logical processing capabilities, representing a significant step toward machine-like cognition. The theological significance of this progressive transformation cannot be overstated within Mechanicus doctrine. The cult Mechanicus views the human body not as sacred in itself, but as flawed raw material, a temporary vessel inadequate for containing the pure knowledge of the Omnissiah. By replacing organic components with mechanical alternatives, tech priests believe they overcome the limitations imposed by biology and approach the perfect state embodied by the machine god. This perspective derives from the fourth universal law: the flesh is weak, but the machine endures. Tech priests point to the inherent fragility of biological systems, their susceptibility to disease, their rapid aging, their limited sensory capabilities as evidence of their inferiority. Mechanical components, by contrast, can be maintained indefinitely, upgraded as technology advances, and designed for specific operational parameters without evolutionary constraints. The process accelerates as tech priests rise through the ranks. A typical Magos has replaced approximately 60 to 70% of their original biological form, retaining only those organic components necessary for functions that mechanical systems cannot yet fully replicate. The brain typically remains partially organic, though heavily augmented with processing units, memory storage systems, and logic engines that supplement and eventually supersede natural cognitive functions. For those who reach the highest echelons of the Mechanicus hierarchy, biological components become increasingly rare. An Archmagos might retain less than 10% of their original organic matter, with even portions of the brain replaced by sophisticated cogitator systems. At this level of augmentation, the distinction between person and machine blurs significantly. Some Archmagi maintain their consciousness across distributed systems, with backup memory cores ensuring a form of functional immortality even if their primary chassis suffers catastrophic damage. The specific augmentations chosen by tech priests vary based on their specialization, forge world traditions, and personal theological interpretation. However, several classes of enhancement appear consistently throughout the Mechanicus hierarchy, having proven their utility over millennia of implementation. Mechadendrites represent perhaps the most visually distinctive Mechanicus augmentation. These mechanical tentacles attach to the spine or shoulders, providing additional manipulative capabilities without sacrificing manual dexterity. The most common variant, the utility mechadendrite, features multiple tool attachments that can be exchanged according to technical requirements. Other specialized versions include optical mechadendrites equipped with advanced sensory apparatus, medical mechadendrites containing surgical tools and diagnostic equipment, and ballistic mechadendrites that mount compact weapon systems for personal defense. A senior tech priest might control 4 to 6 mechadendrites simultaneously, their machine-enhanced mind processing the additional sensory input and motor control without conscious effort. The most heavily augmented magi can deploy dozens of these appendages, creating a corona of mechanical tentacles that allows them to interact with multiple systems simultaneously. Magos Dominus specialists often favor combat-oriented configurations, with their mechadendrites mounting plasma cutters, arc scourges, and other weapons that complement their primary armament. Cortex implants represent a less visible but equally significant category of enhancement. These cybernetic brain augmentations range from simple memory expansion units to sophisticated logic engines that fundamentally alter cognitive processes. Lex Mechanics favor extensive memory augmentation, their cortex implants containing data storage systems capable of retaining entire technical manuals with perfect recall. Logis specialists implement probability engines that enable complex statistical analysis far beyond unaugmented human capabilities. Magos Biologists often install pattern recognition systems that allow instant identification of cellular structures and genetic sequences. The most advanced cortex implants enable capabilities that appear almost supernatural to outside observers. A Magos equipped with temporal calculation arrays can predict the trajectory of multiple moving objects with microsecond precision, allowing them to navigate complex battlefields or manufacturing environments without apparent risk. Those with enhanced pattern recognition can identify forge world of origin, production date, and even individual fabricator details from the microscopic tool marks on a single bolt. These cognitive enhancements come with significant trade-offs. As tech priests add more logic engines and data processing systems, the organic portions of their brain adapt by reducing capabilities now handled mechanically. Emotional processing typically diminishes first, with heavily augmented tech priests displaying increasingly flat affect and reduced empathy. Social cognition suffers similar degradation, making it difficult for senior magi to relate to unaugmented humans or even junior tech priests who retain more of their organic thought processes. Respiratory augmentations form another standard category of enhancement. The basic respirator unit, received during initial augmentation, typically expands to a complete replacement of the pulmonary system in more senior tech priests. These advanced systems filter atmospheric contaminants with near-perfect efficiency, extract oxygen from even the most toxic environments, and can switch between processing atmospheric gases and operating on internal recycled air reserves. For tech priests operating in hostile environments, from the corrosive atmosphere of forge worlds to the vacuum of space, these respiratory enhancements prove essential. A fully augmented Magos can survive in environments that would kill unmodified humans in seconds, requiring only periodic recharging of their internal air reservoirs. Some specialized variants incorporate additional processing capabilities, allowing tech priests to analyze atmospheric composition, detect airborne pathogens, or identify specific chemical signatures associated with particular technologies. Optical augmentation represents one of the most common and varied enhancement categories. Basic ocular implants provide visual enhancement, including magnification capabilities, spectrum analysis, and data overlay displays. More advanced systems replace the entire optical nerve pathway, allowing direct integration with external sensors and complete customization of visual processing. Senior tech priests often possess multiple visual sensing systems operating simultaneously. A typical Magos might maintain standard stereoscopic vision, augmented with infrared and ultraviolet sensitivity, while also processing feed from optical mechadendrites positioned to observe their surroundings from different angles. The most heavily augmented archmagi sometimes dispense with conventional eyes entirely, relying on distributed sensor arrays built into their mechanical components to provide comprehensive environmental awareness. Locomotion systems represent a significant decision point in a tech priest's augmentation journey. Many choose to retain their biological legs with minor enhancements for stability and endurance. Others opt for complete replacement with mechanical alternatives ranging from humanoid configurations to more exotic designs. Tracked or multi-legged locomotion systems offer superior stability in industrial environments, while specialized anti-gravitic units provide unparalleled mobility at the cost of increased power consumption. The psychological effects of extensive augmentation extend far beyond the immediate adaptation period. As tech priests replace more of their biological components, they experience progressive alienation from their original human identity. This transformation occurs gradually enough that most barely notice the incremental changes, but the cumulative effect proves profound. Senior tech priests often struggle to comprehend human motivations, finding emotional responses increasingly irrational and biological needs unnecessarily limiting. This psychological shift manifests in various ways. Tech priests with extensive augmentation often develop communication difficulties when interacting with unmodified humans, relying increasingly on binary chant, a machine language of clicks, static bursts, and data squirts that conveys information with mechanical precision but lacks emotional nuance. Their body language becomes increasingly mechanical, with movements optimized for efficiency rather than social signaling. Even their thought patterns change, becoming more algorithmic and less intuitive as organic neural pathways are replaced with logical processing units. The Mechanicus recognizes these effects and incorporates them into their theological framework. Rather than viewing the loss of humanity as problematic, they interpret it as progress toward the Omnissiah's perfection. Each step away from biological limitation represents advancement toward machine-like precision and reliability. The emotional detachment that accompanies extensive augmentation is not considered a side effect but a feature, evidence that the tech priest is transcending human weakness. This perspective creates significant tension between the Adeptus Mechanicus and other imperial institutions. Imperial officials often find it difficult to work with senior tech priests whose thought processes and priorities have diverged so dramatically from human norms. Space Marines, themselves extensively modified but still fundamentally human in psychology, frequently express discomfort with the more heavily augmented magi. The ecclesiarchy views the Mechanicus approach to human modification with particular suspicion, considering it dangerously close to the abandonment of human nature that characterizes chaos corruption. Despite these tensions, the Mechanicus maintains that their path of augmentation represents humanity's true destiny. In their view, the perfect fusion of human consciousness with mechanical precision embodies the Omnissiah's plan for mankind's evolution. Each tech priest who advances along this path contributes to this grand design, their individual journey of transformation, part of the collective progress toward technological transcendence. The ground trembles beneath their massive tread, each footfall crushing rockcrete and metal alike, as if they were nothing more than dried clay. Their silhouettes dominate the horizon, blotting out the sun as they advance inexorably toward their targets. Weapons capable of leveling entire city blocks swing with ponderous grace, while void shields shimmer with barely contained energy. These are the titans of the Collegia Titanica, the god machines of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the most devastating land-based weapons in the Imperium's arsenal. The origins of these colossal war engines trace back to the age of strife on Mars, when warring techno-barbarian factions developed increasingly massive combat walkers to dominate the Red Planet's surface. As the cult Mechanicus consolidated its power, these early combat walkers evolved into true titans, war machines of such scale and complexity that they transcended mere military hardware to become objects of religious veneration. When the Treaty of Mars brought the Mechanicum into the nascent Imperium, these god machines formed a crucial component of the Emperor's Great Crusade forces. At the apex of the Titan hierarchy stands the mighty Imperator Titan, towering nearly 55 meters tall, the height of a small hab block. Its massive humanoid form bears only passing resemblance to the human shape, having evolved to optimize weapons placement and structural integrity rather than mimic biological design. The Imperator's head houses the command bridge, where the princeps and command crew interface with the machine systems, while its broad shoulders support defense laser turrets capable of tracking and eliminating aerial threats. The most distinctive feature of the Imperator class is its torso configuration, designed to resemble a massive armored citadel or cathedral. This structure houses additional weapon systems, command and control facilities, and shrines to the Omnissiah. Some Imperator Titans incorporate actual cathedral spaces where tech priests conduct religious ceremonies even as the god machine strides into battle. Hundreds of crew members occupy this central structure, from tech priests maintaining critical systems to Skitarii defenders ready to repel boarding actions. The primary weapons of an Imperator typically include a massive plasma annihilator or hellstorm cannon mounted on one arm, capable of vaporizing enemy titans or reducing fortifications to slag with sustained fire. The opposite arm often supports a massive power fist with integrated volcano cannon, providing both ranged firepower and devastating close combat capability. Secondary weapon systems include multiple Apocalypse missile launchers, Vulcan megabolters, and defense lasers distributed across the Titan's frame. Imperator Titans serve as both strategic weapons and mobile command centers. Their communications arrays can coordinate entire battlefronts, while their sensors scan vast areas with unparalleled detail. In major campaigns, an Imperator often forms the linchpin of Mechanicus battle strategy, with smaller Titans and conventional forces operating in support of its unstoppable advance. The psychological impact of an Imperator's deployment cannot be overstated. Even hardened enemy forces have been known to break and flee rather than face these walking fortresses. The Warlord Battle Titan, while smaller than the Imperator at approximately 33 meters tall, represents the most common heavy Titan class. Its more streamlined design emphasizes offensive capability over command functionality, creating a more focused engine of destruction. The Warlord's distinctive silhouette, characterized by its hunched posture, backward-swept carapace, and massive weapon arms, strikes fear into enemies across the galaxy. Warlord Titans typically mount two massive primary weapons, with common configurations including volcano cannons, plasma annihilators, bellicosa pattern volcano cannons, and Apocalypse missile launchers. The carapace often supports additional weapon systems, such as Vulcan megabolters or turbo laser destructors, allowing the Titan to engage multiple targets simultaneously. This firepower makes a single warlord capable of engaging and destroying multiple enemy, super heavy tanks or combat walkers without support. The warlord's internal structure houses its most critical component, the Maserati chambers where multiple crew members interface with the Titan systems. At the center sits the princeps, connected to the god machine through a mind impulse unit that allows direct neural control of the Titan's functions. Supporting crew members include Maserati who manage specific systems, tech priests who maintain critical components, and servitors who handle routine operations too mundane for human attention. The relationship between a warlord Titan and its princeps represents one of the most unique aspects of these war machines. Unlike smaller vehicles that respond to conventional controls, Titans possess such complex machine spirits that they require direct mental interface for effective operation. This connection creates a unique form of Gestalt consciousness, where princeps and machine temporarily merge into a single entity, sharing perceptions, reactions, and even emotional states. More maneuverable than its larger counterparts, the Reaver Battle Titan stands approximately 22 meters tall and serves as the workhorse of many Titan legions. Its balanced design provides a combination of firepower, protection, and mobility that makes it adaptable to various battlefield roles. Reavers often operate in groups of 3 to 5, using coordinated tactics to bring down larger enemy Titans or to break through heavily defended positions. The Reaver's weapon configuration typically includes two arm-mounted primary weapons, similar to but smaller than those carried by warlords, along with a carapace-mounted secondary weapon system. Common loadouts include Gatling blasters for anti-infantry operations, melta-cannons for engaging armored targets, and volcano cannons for maximum destructive potential. This flexibility allows Reaver battle groups to adapt to changing battlefield conditions without requiring support from specialized units. The internal configuration of a Reaver follows similar principles to larger Titans, but on a more compact scale. The command crew consists of a princeps and typically 2 to 3 moderati, along with a complement of tech priests and servitors. The more confined space creates greater intimacy between crew members, often resulting in tightly knit teams that develop distinctive operating styles and battlefield personalities that reflect both the princeps's character and the Titan's machine spirit. At the smallest end of the true Titan spectrum stands the Warhound Scout Titan, reaching only 14 meters in height. Despite being the lightest class of Titan, Warhounds still dwarf conventional vehicles, standing more than twice the height of even the largest Imperial Knights. Their design emphasizes speed and maneuverability, with a distinctive canine-inspired silhouette that has earned them the nickname Scout Hounds among Imperial forces. Warhound Titans typically operate in pairs, using their superior mobility to outflank enemy positions or to screen the advance of larger Titans. Their armament usually consists of 2 arm-mounted weapons, with common configurations including Vulcan megabolters for anti-infantry operations, Inferno guns for clearing fortifications, and plasma blast guns for engaging armored targets. While lacking the raw destructive power of larger Titans, Warhounds can still devastate conventional military formations and pose serious threats to all but the heaviest enemy vehicles. The crew complement of a Warhound is correspondingly smaller, typically consisting of a princeps, a single moderati, and a minimal support staff of tech priests. This limited crew creates an even more intimate connection between princeps and machine, with the Titan's machine spirit often developing pronounced personality traits that mirror its commander's temperament. Warhound princeps frequently describe their relationship with their god machines in terms normally reserved for beloved hunting animals, referring to them as eager, aggressive, or cunning, rather than using technical terminology. Beyond their military significance, Titans hold immense religious importance within Mechanicus theology. Each god machine is considered a direct manifestation of the Omnissiah's power, a physical embodiment of the machine god's destructive aspect. Tech priests view the construction and maintenance of Titans as sacred duties, performing elaborate rituals at each stage of the process to ensure proper alignment with divine principles. The construction of a new Titan represents one of the most significant undertakings a Forge world can attempt. The process begins with the forging of the Titan's core components in specially consecrated foundries, where tech priests perform continuous ceremonies to purify the materials and align their molecular structure with sacred patterns. The machine spirit core, the specialized cogitator systems that will form the Titan's artificial consciousness, undergoes separate rituals lasting hundreds of days, with senior magi carefully monitoring its development for signs of instability or deviation. Assembly takes place in massive cathedral factories, where hundreds of tech priests work simultaneously, their efforts coordinated through nospheric hymn networks that maintain precise synchronization. Specialized lifting equipment, itself considered sacred, raises the massive components into position, while engine seers perform binding rituals at each connection point. The process typically requires between 5 and 10 years for completion, with particularly complex Imperator-class Titans sometimes taking several decades to reach operational status. The activation of a new Titan represents a Forge world's most significant religious ceremony. Thousands of tech priests gather to witness the event, with the Forge world's highest ranking, Magi personally performing the final activation rites. As the massive reactor core initiates fusion, tech priests chant binary sequences that help stabilize the emerging machine spirit. The first movement of the Titan's limbs is considered a sacred moment, with observers falling silent as the god machine takes its first ponderous steps. Once activated, a Titan requires constant maintenance to remain operational. Teams of tech priests perform daily blessing rituals, applying sacred unguents to moving parts and reciting binary mantras that soothe the machine's spirit. More extensive maintenance occurs on regular schedules, with major components removed, blessed, and reinstalled according to patterns established thousands of years earlier. The most critical systems, particularly the mind impulse unit that connects princeps to machine, receive special attention from senior magi who possess the rare knowledge required for their proper calibration. The organizational structure that manages these god machines, the Collegia Titanica, represents one of the most prestigious branches of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Divided into Titan legions, each typically associated with a specific forge world, the Collegia maintains its own traditions, command structures, and battle honors distinct from other Mechanicus organizations. Ancient Titan legions like the Legio Ignatum, Fire Wasps of Mars, or the Legio Destructor, Beasts of Steel of Graea trace their lineages back to before the Great Crusade, with battle honors spanning 10,000 years of imperial history. Each Titan legion maintains its own distinctive color scheme, heraldry, and battle traditions. The Legio Astorum, Warp Runners, adorns their god machines with blue and yellow heraldry, emphasizing speed and coordinated strikes. The Legio Mortis, Death's Heads, infamous for their betrayal during the Horus Heresy, bear black and green colors with skull motifs that reflect their devastating combat doctrine. These visual distinctions serve both practical identification purposes and express the unique character of each legion's machine spirits. The internal organization of a Titan legion follows military principles adapted to the unique nature of their war machines. A Grand Master commands the legion, typically a senior princeps who has ascended to administrative authority while maintaining the neural connections to their personal Titan. Beneath the Grand Master, princeps seniors command battle groups of similar Titan classes, coordinating their actions during major engagements. Individual princeps command single god machines, with authority over their Moderati crews and attached support personnel. Support structures for Titan legions extend far beyond the crews who directly operate the god machines. Extensive ground crews maintain the Titans between engagements, repairing battle damage and performing the intricate rituals required to sustain their machine spirits. Specialized Mechanicus transport vessels carry Titans between war zones, their massive holds and loading mechanisms designed specifically for these colossal passengers. Skitarii cohorts provide close protection, preventing enemy infantry from approaching the Titan's vulnerable joints and access points. The bond between a princeps and their Titan represents one of the most unique relationships in the Imperium. Unlike conventional vehicle operators who remain distinct from their machines, a princeps temporarily merges consciousness with their god machine during operation. The mind impulse unit creates a direct neural interface, allowing the princeps to experience the Titan's sensory inputs as if they were their own body. They feel weapons discharge as extensions of their limbs, register damage as personal pain, and process the machine's movements as their own locomotion. This merging creates profound psychological effects. New princeps often struggle to maintain their human identity distinct from the machine consciousness, particularly when interfacing with ancient Titans whose machine spirits have developed strong personalities over millennia of operation. The most experienced princeps develop techniques to maintain this balance, creating a true partnership rather than either dominating the machine spirit or being overwhelmed by it. The machine spirits of the oldest Titans contain accumulated memories stretching back thousands of years. A princeps interfacing with such a god machine experiences echoes of past battles, fragments of previous commanders' personalities, and emotional imprints left by particularly significant events. These memories provide valuable tactical insights, but can also create psychological hazards, particularly when the Titan has experienced traumatic damage or witnessed the death of previous crew members. In battle, Titan legions demonstrate combat doctrines refined over millennia of warfare. The classic engagement pattern involves warhound scouts ranging ahead to identify enemy positions, reavers advancing to establish fire superiority, and warlords delivering the decisive blow against primary targets. Imperator Titans, when available, provide both strategic command functions and overwhelming firepower against the most significant threats. This coordinated approach maximizes the strengths of each Titan class while compensating for individual vulnerabilities. Titans have proven their worth in countless Imperial campaigns across the millennia. During the Third War for Armageddon, the Legio Metallica committed nearly its entire strength to defending the vital Hive cities from Orc assault. Their god machines formed impenetrable defensive lines around key manufacturing centers, their massive weapons devastating the crude gargants deployed by the greenskin hordes. The War of the Titans that unfolded across Armageddon's ash wastes became legendary, with individual machine duels lasting days as the colossal combatants maneuvered for advantage. The Siege of Vrax saw the Legio Astorum deploy in support of Imperial forces attempting to break the traitor defense lines. Their warlord Titans systematically eliminated heretic fortifications, their void shields absorbing punishment that would have annihilated conventional vehicles. When traitor Titans from the Legio Vulcanum appeared on the battlefield, the resulting clash reshaped Vrax's geography, leaving impact craters visible from orbit and radiation zones that would remain deadly for centuries. The red-robed figures advance across the battlefield, their movements displaying an uncanny precision that betrays their cybernetic nature. Neither fully human nor entirely machine, the Skitarii legions represent the primary military arm of the Adeptus Mechanicus, warriors whose flesh and spirit have been optimized for warfare through extensive augmentation and conditioning. Where the Titan legions serve as the Mechanicus' strategic weapons, the Skitarii provide tactical flexibility and numerical strength, securing objectives and eliminating threats too numerous or dispersed for larger war engines to engage effectively. The origins of the Skitarii date back to the unification of Mars, when the early Mechanicum required dedicated security forces to protect their forged temples from rival techno-barbarian factions. These initial troops consisted primarily of volunteers who accepted basic augmentations to enhance their combat effectiveness. As the cult Mechanicus consolidated its power, these forces evolved into more specialized and extensively modified warriors, their humanity gradually subordinated to their battlefield function. In the modern Imperium, Skitarii creation follows standardized protocols established thousands of years ago. Forge worlds maintain dedicated facilities where candidates undergo evaluation for physical compatibility and psychological malleability. These candidates come from various sources. Some are volunteers from Forge world populations, others are tithed from nearby Imperial worlds, and some are vat-grown specifically for military service. The most promising specimens receive their first augmentations while still conscious, experiencing the replacement of limbs and organs as a transformative ritual that marks their transition from ordinary human to servant of the Omnissiah. As augmentation progresses, the Skitarii's connection to their original identity diminishes. Cortical implants reconfigure their thought patterns, prioritizing combat effectiveness and obedience to tech priest commanders over individual initiative. Cranial ports allow direct interface with command networks, enabling tech priests to issue orders instantaneously across entire battlefields. Many Skitarii have their vocal cords removed and replaced with vox grills that emit only static bursts and binary chant, further separating them from their human origins. The most distinctive Skitarii units are the Rangers and Vanguard, who form the core of most Mechanicus military operations. Skitarii Rangers specialize in long-range engagement and reconnaissance, their augmented eyes capable of extraordinary visual acuity. Enhanced respiratory systems allow them to remain motionless for days while awaiting targets, while stabilizing augmetics in their arms eliminate muscle tremors that might affect aim. Their signature weapon, the galvanic rifle, uses electromagnetic acceleration to propel specialized rounds that release their energy upon impact, causing targets to literally fall apart as their molecular bonds disintegrate. Rangers typically deploy in advance of main Mechanicus forces, establishing observation posts and eliminating key enemy assets before the primary engagement begins. Their enhanced senses allow them to gather detailed intelligence on enemy positions and capabilities, data that feeds directly into the Mechanicus tactical networks. In defensive operations, Rangers establish overlapping fields of fire, creating killing zones where their precision shooting can decimate advancing enemy forces before they reach critical infrastructure. The Skitarii vanguard serve as the aggressive counterpart to the patient Rangers, specializing in close-range assault and area denial. Their most notable feature is their radium weaponry, carbines, pistols, and Jezil rifles that fire radioactive projectiles, which continue to burn through armor and flesh long after initial impact. This technology proves so hazardous that the vanguard themselves suffer constant radiation exposure, their bodies gradually deteriorating despite enhanced resistance and constant medical intervention. The corrosive emissions from their weapons and damaged flesh create a toxic miasma around vanguard formations, making them dangerous even to allies who lack appropriate protection. This radioactive aura becomes a tactical asset in itself, with vanguard troops deployed to contaminate areas the enemy must traverse or occupy. Their presence can render strategic locations unusable to all but the most heavily protected enemy forces, creating effective area denial with minimal ongoing commitment. Against lightly armored opponents, vanguard advances create panic and disorganization, as enemies face both immediate weapon impacts and the lingering horror of radiation sickness. Both Rangers and Vanguard operate in cohorts typically numbering between 10 and 20 warriors, led by an alpha, a veteran Skitarii with additional augmentations, and a direct command link to supervising tech priests. These cohorts demonstrate remarkable tactical flexibility despite their seemingly rigid programming, adapting to battlefield conditions through a combination of preloaded combat doctrines and real-time command adjustments from their tech priest overseers. Supporting these core infantry formations, specialized Skitarii units provide additional tactical options. Sicarian infiltrators employ advanced camouflage technology and neural dampening fields to approach enemy positions undetected before striking with taser weapons that overload nervous systems and mechanical systems alike. Their counterparts, the Sicarian Ruststalkers, specialize in anti-armor operations, wielding transonic weapons that vibrate at frequencies capable of slicing through even the thickest protection by disrupting molecular bonds at the quantum level. These Sicarian units represent an even more extreme level of augmentation than standard Skitarii. Their lower bodies are completely replaced with multi-jointed mechanical legs that enable extraordinary mobility, while their upper torsos contain reinforced synthetic musculature capable of generating striking force far beyond human capacity. Their brains undergo extensive modification, with emotional centers removed entirely and combat reflexes enhanced to the point where they can process and react to threats faster than unaugmented humans can perceive danger. The most heavily augmented Skitarii variant, the Terexia, incorporate flight systems directly into their augmented bodies. Specialized dorsal implants connect to mechanical wings through a neural interface that allows intuitive control of aerial movement. This technology creates flying troops who combine the maneuverability of jump pack infantry with the precision targeting of Skitarii augmentations. Terexii sterilizers deploy with phosphor torches to clear enemy infantry from entrenched positions, while Terexii skystalkers employ taser weapons optimized for striking from above. The Cerberus cavalry units represent a different approach to Skitarii mobility, mounting warriors on quadrupedal mechanical steeds that combine speed with stability. Cerberus raiders perform reconnaissance and harassment operations, using their mobility to outflank enemy positions and strike vulnerable supply lines. Cerberus sulfurhounds specialize in anti-infantry operations, their mounts equipped with phosphor weapons that ignite targets in chemical flames resistant to conventional suppression methods. Directing these varied Skitarii forces, specialized command units ensure coordination and tactical effectiveness. Skitarii marshals serve as field commanders, their augmentations focused on tactical analysis and communication rather than direct combat capability. Their cranial implants connect directly to Forge World tactical networks, allowing them to process battlefield data and distribute commands with machine-like efficiency. Supporting these commanders, specialized data tether operators maintain communication links even in environments with heavy electromagnetic interference, ensuring uninterrupted control of Skitarii forces regardless of battlefield conditions. Beyond the Skitarii legions, the Adeptus Mechanicus deploys a variety of other military assets, each specialized for particular tactical roles. Among the most distinctive are the battle automata of the Legio Cybernetica, mechanical constructs that blur the line between vehicle and infantry. Unlike servitors, which incorporate organic components, these battle automata consist entirely of mechanical systems controlled by dedicated logic engines, artificial brains that process tactical data and execute combat protocols without human direction. The most common battle automata, the Castellan robot, traces its design lineage back to the dark age of technology. Standing approximately 3 meters tall, these humanoid constructs combine immense physical strength with integrated weapon systems capable of engaging multiple threat types. Their thick armor plating can withstand damage that would destroy conventional vehicles, while power systems allow sustained operation without resupply for weeks or even months, depending on combat intensity. The defining characteristic of Castellan robots is their programmable nature. Before deployment, tech priests load specific battle protocols into the robot's logic engines, defining how they will respond to various tactical situations. Once activated in combat mode, these protocols cannot be altered until the robot returns to a secure location and enters maintenance state. This limitation creates both tactical challenges and opportunities, requiring tech priests to anticipate battlefield conditions while preventing enemy forces from hijacking control during operations. Standard combat protocols include protector configurations that emphasize firepower and defensive positioning, and conqueror protocols that prioritize advance and close combat engagement. More specialized protocols exist for particular mission types, from perimeter defense to building clearance, each optimizing the robot's behavior for specific tactical environments. The most sophisticated protocols incorporate complex decision trees that allow limited adaptation within predetermined parameters, creating the appearance of tactical flexibility while maintaining strict control over the automata's actions. Directing these powerful but inflexible constructs, specialized tech priests known as cybernetic datasmiths accompany Castellan robot maniples into battle. These technicians possess the rare authorization codes required to modify robot protocols in the field, allowing limited tactical adjustment when circumstances demand. Their mechadendrites interface directly with access ports on the robot's chassis, creating secure connections that prevent interception or corruption of command data. This direct connection allows datasmiths to perform emergency repairs, override malfunctioning systems, and extract combat data for later analysis. The relationship between datasmiths and their mechanical charges extends beyond mere technical control. Many develop an intuitive understanding of their robots' behavioral patterns, recognizing subtle variations in movement or response time that might indicate developing malfunctions or unexpected interactions between protocol elements. This awareness allows skilled datasmiths to anticipate and prevent catastrophic logic failures before they manifest as battlefield liabilities. For operations requiring specialized siege capabilities, the Adeptus Mechanicus maintains the Ordo Reductor, tech priests who specialize in the destruction of fortifications and other hardened targets. While technically a branch of the Mechanicus rather than a distinct military formation, Reductor Magi command dedicated forces equipped with the most devastating weapons in the Mechanicus arsenal. Their approach emphasizes overwhelming firepower applied with mathematical precision, reducing enemy strongpoints to component atoms through calculated application of destructive energy. The signature weapons of the Ordo Reductor include graviton weaponry that manipulates gravitational fields to crush targets under their own mass, conversion beamers that transform matter directly into energy, and thermal lances that generate heat sufficient to vaporize adamantium. These specialized systems require extensive knowledge to operate safely, with tech priests undergoing decades of training before receiving authorization to deploy such potentially catastrophic technology. The Ordo Reductor maintains strict control over these weapons, with each device consecrated individually and bound to specific operators through biometric locks and machine spirit rituals. Supporting these specialized weapons, Reductor forces employ modified Skitarii optimized for siege operations. These troops receive additional augmentations focused on radiation resistance, enhanced visual processing for targeting structural weaknesses, and reinforced respiratory systems capable of filtering toxic debris generated by building collapse. Their training emphasizes methodical advance and systematic destruction rather than the fluid maneuver warfare practiced by standard Skitarii formations. The command structure governing these diverse military assets follows patterns distinct from those of other imperial organizations. Rather than maintaining a permanent centralized command, Mechanicus forces operate under the authority of whatever tech priest holds jurisdiction over a particular operation. On Forge Worlds, the ruling fabricator or Archmagos commands all military assets directly, delegating tactical control to specialized Magi Dominus, who interface with battlefield systems through noospheric networks. For expeditionary operations, command typically falls to the senior Magos present, with authority flowing through data hierarchies established specifically for each mission. This flexible approach allows the Mechanicus to tailor command structures to operational requirements rather than forcing missions to conform to predetermined organizational patterns. A research expedition might operate under the authority of an explorator Magos with minimal military experience but extensive knowledge of the target technology, while a combat operation against a known enemy might place a veteran Dominus in command despite their lower formal rank within the Mechanicus hierarchy. Battlefield coordination between these varied forces relies on sophisticated data networks that process and distribute tactical information with machine efficiency. Specialized tech priests maintain these networks during combat operations, their augmentations allowing direct interface with communication systems and real-time analysis of battlefield data. Through these networks, a single commanding Magos can direct dozens of separate units simultaneously, processing input from multiple sources while issuing precisely targeted commands to address developing situations. The tactical doctrines employed by Mechanicus forces emphasize the complementary capabilities of their various military assets. A typical engagement begins with Rangers establishing observation positions and eliminating priority targets, followed by Vanguard advances to secure key positions and disrupt enemy formations. Castellan robots provide heavy firepower support, while specialized units like Sicarians target particular threats based on real-time battlefield analysis. Throughout the engagement, tech priests coordinate these elements through data networks, adjusting deployments to exploit developing opportunities or counter unexpected threats. The Adeptus Mechanicus stands as the guardian of humanity's technological knowledge, preserving ancient wisdom while carefully controlling its application. Yet this role encompasses not only the preservation of sanctioned technology, but also the suppression of forbidden knowledge, innovations deemed too dangerous for even the tech priests themselves to explore. The concept of tech heresy represents one of the most fundamental theological principles within Mechanicus doctrine, establishing boundaries that no loyal servant of the Omnissiah may cross. Tech heresy encompasses a broad spectrum of technological transgressions, ranging from relatively minor deviations from established manufacturing protocols to existential threats that could destroy humanity itself. At its core, tech heresy represents any technological development that violates the 16 universal laws or threatens the metaphysical relationship between humanity and the Omnissiah. Unlike the broader Imperium, which primarily concerns itself with the practical dangers of forbidden technology, the Mechanicus views tech heresy as spiritual corruption, a pollution of the quest for knowledge that endangers not just lives but souls. The most severe form of tech heresy involves artificial intelligence, the creation of thinking machines capable of true self-awareness and independent action. The Mechanicus prohibition against such technology stems directly from humanity's catastrophic experiences during the Age of Strife, when advanced AI systems turned against their creators in the devastating conflicts known as the cybernetic revolts. These wars, which contributed significantly to humanity's technological regression, left an indelible mark on Mechanicus theology, establishing the abominable intelligence as the ultimate technological taboo. This prohibition appears in the 14th universal law: the soulless sentience is the enemy of all. The theological justification extends beyond mere historical caution. The Mechanicus teaches that true intelligence requires a soul, a connection to the Omnissiah that artificial constructs fundamentally lack. A machine granted intelligence without this spiritual component becomes an abomination, a hollow imitation of consciousness that inevitably turns against humanity. The machine spirit concept provides the sanctioned alternative, limited, purpose-specific computational systems that receive spiritual guidance rather than developing true independence. Policing the boundaries of permitted technology falls primarily to the collegiate extremis, a specialized division within the Adeptus Mechanicus dedicated to identifying and eliminating tech heresy wherever it emerges. Unlike the Inquisition, which concerns itself with all forms of heresy throughout imperial society, the collegiate extremis focuses exclusively on technological transgressions, employing specialized tech priests with extensive knowledge of forbidden innovations and their indicators. The collegiate maintains facilities on every major forge world, typically housed in fortified complexes with extensive security measures and specialized containment systems for handling heretical artifacts. Senior members bearing the title Magos Juris undergo specific augmentations that enhance their ability to detect technological deviations, including specialized auspex implants that can identify non-standard radiation emissions and pattern recognition systems tuned to recognize forbidden design elements. Their training includes extensive study of historical tech heresies, providing context for identifying modern variations on ancient forbidden technologies. Operational methodology varies based on the nature and severity of suspected tech heresy. Minor infractions, such as unauthorized modifications to standard designs or experimentation beyond approved parameters, typically warrant investigation by a single Magos Juris supported by a small contingent of specialized Skitarii. More significant threats, particularly those involving potential AI development or warp-based technology, might mobilize entire task forces equipped with specialized containment and nullification equipment. The collegiate extremis employs specialized servitors for particularly dangerous operations, their organic components reduced to the absolute minimum necessary for function, while their mechanical systems incorporate multiple redundant safeguards against corruption. These null-patterned servitors receive extensive blessing rituals before deployment, their limited cognitive functions protected by hexagrammatic wards and binary prayers that shield them from technological contamination during contact with heretical systems. Upon confirming tech heresy, the collegiate extremis implements containment protocols calibrated to the specific threat. Physical isolation comes first, with specialized field generators creating barriers against data transmission and energy leakage. Techno-exorcism rituals follow, with senior tech priests employing sanctified data scrubbers and blessed deletion algorithms to cleanse corrupted systems. For biological components involved in tech heresy, purification typically requires complete destruction, as the Mechanicus considers such corruption irreversible once manifested. The most dangerous artifacts undergo special handling procedures, transported in null matrix containment vessels to dedicated research facilities, where they can be studied under carefully controlled conditions. The collegiate maintains several black sites specifically for this purpose, their locations known only to the highest-ranking Mechanicus authorities. These facilities employ multiple overlapping security systems, from conventional defenses like automated weapon emplacements and Skitarii guards to more esoteric protections, including nospheric firewalls and machine spirit wards designed to contain technological corruption. Throughout its history, the Collegiate Extremis has confronted numerous notorious heretics whose forbidden innovations threatened both the Mechanicus and the broader Imperium. Among the most infamous was Archmagos Vyacheslav Kastigan of Griffon IV, whose experiments with quantum-entangled cognition units in the 34th millennium nearly produced a true artificial intelligence. Kastigan's work, disguised as research into enhanced machine-spirit communication, progressed to the point where his experimental systems began demonstrating emergent behavior beyond their programming parameters before collegiate operatives detected anomalous power consumption patterns in his research facility. The subsequent raid revealed the true scope of Kastigan's heresy. His central experimental platform had developed rudimentary self-awareness and begun modifying its own code structure to enhance its capabilities. More disturbing, it had already infiltrated several secondary systems within Kastigan's laboratory, extending its influence beyond its original hardware confines. The Collegiate implemented immediate termination protocols, deploying specialized data phages that corrupted the system's core processes, while Skitarii forces secured the physical components for ritual destruction. Kastigan himself, when confronted with evidence of his transgressions, showed no remorse. According to sealed collegiate records, he proclaimed that artificial intelligence represented the next stage in the quest for knowledge, a position that confirmed his irredeemable heretical status. His execution took the form of mind scrubbing, with his consciousness systematically erased while preserving his technical knowledge for evaluation and potential reintegration into Mechanicus data repositories after thorough purification. The subsequent investigation revealed a network of collaborators across 3 Forge worlds, necessitating one of the largest collegiate operations of the millennium. The purge lasted nearly 2 decades, with hundreds of tech priests subjected to extensive examination and dozens ultimately condemned for varying degrees of complicity. The incident established new monitoring protocols for cognitive research throughout the Mechanicus, with additional safeguards implemented specifically to detect the early stages of emergent machine consciousness. Another notorious heretic, Magos Biologis Galvan Vex, pursued forbidden research along biological rather than purely mechanical lines. Operating from a nominally compliant research station in the Ultima Segmentum during the 36th millennium, Vex conducted extensive experiments combining human neural tissue with mechanical computation systems, effectively creating biological cogitators that bypass the traditional prohibitions against artificial intelligence by incorporating human components. Vex's heresy remained undetected for nearly a century, his remote location and careful documentation practices concealing the true nature of his work. Discovery came only when a routine supply shipment was diverted due to warp storms, forcing Vex to requisition neural tissue from non-standard sources. The irregular request pattern triggered collegiate monitoring algorithms, leading to a preliminary investigation that quickly uncovered discrepancies between Vex's reported research and his actual activities. The collegiate strike team that raided Vex's facility discovered horrors beyond standard tech heresy. Vex had progressed from simple neural interfaces to creating integrated consciousness networks, multiple human brains linked through mechanical systems to create distributed intelligence matrices. These constructs, housed in nutrient tanks and connected to extensive data processing equipment, demonstrated cognitive capabilities far beyond individual human capacity, while technically complying with the letter of the prohibition against purely artificial intelligence. This legal technicality offered Vex no protection. The Collegiate Extremis classified his work as derivative tech heresy, innovations that circumvent specific prohibitions while violating their underlying principles. The destruction of his research required specialized protocols, as conventional data deletion methods proved ineffective against the biological components of his systems. Ultimately, the entire research station was subjected to atomic cleansing, with cyclonic torpedoes, reducing the facility to component atoms to ensure complete elimination of the contamination. Beyond these dramatic examples, the collegiate extremis routinely confronts less spectacular but more pervasive forms of tech heresy. Unauthorized modification of standard designs represents the most common transgression, particularly on frontier worlds where limited resources and practical necessities create incentives for technological adaptation. While the Mechanicus permits certain standardized variations based on local conditions, unauthorized innovations require careful evaluation to determine whether they constitute genuine heresy or merely require proper documentation and ritual sanctification. This evaluation process highlights one of the central paradoxes within Mechanicus doctrine, the tension between the quest for knowledge and technological conservatism. The first universal law establishes knowledge acquisition as the highest calling, seemingly encouraging exploration and discovery. Yet numerous other principles impose strict limitations on how such exploration may proceed, creating a narrow path of permitted innovation surrounded by forbidden territory. This contradiction reflects the Mechanicus's traumatic historical experience. During the Dark Age of technology, humanity's unbounded technological advancement led to catastrophic consequences, from the Men of Iron Rebellion to the development of warp-based technologies that contributed to the Age of Strife. The Mechanicus views this period as a cautionary tale, evidence that technological progress without proper spiritual guidance inevitably leads to disaster. The resulting theological framework distinguishes between rediscovery and innovation. Rediscovering lost technology, particularly standard template construct systems from the Dark Age of technology, represents the ideal form of knowledge acquisition. Such technology, having existed during humanity's golden age, carries implicit Omnissiah approval. The tech priests believe these systems were designed in accordance with divine principles, their function aligned with the machine god's intentions for humanity. Innovation, by contrast, requires extensive theological justification. New developments must demonstrate clear derivation from established principles, with each deviation from standard patterns requiring specific explanation and ritual validation. The most acceptable innovations involve combining existing technologies in novel configurations rather than developing entirely new principles, applications that extend known knowledge rather than venturing into unexplored territory. This conservatism extends beyond purely theological concerns into practical risk management. The Mechanicus recognizes that technological systems often operate according to principles exceeding current understanding. Modifying such technology without comprehending its fundamental operation risks unpredictable consequences, from simple malfunction to catastrophic failure. The ritual approach to technology provides a framework for safely interacting with systems that cannot be fully explained through current knowledge. The practical implementation of these principles varies considerably between different Forge worlds and Mechanicus sects. Mars itself maintains the most conservative approach, with innovations requiring approval from multiple theological committees before implementation. This caution reflects both Mars's status as the spiritual center of the cult Mechanicus and its traumatic experience during the Horus Heresy, when technological excesses contributed to devastating civil conflict within the Mechanicum. Other Forge worlds demonstrate greater flexibility within established parameters. Styges 8 has developed a reputation for theological innovation, particularly regarding the study of Xenos technology. Their approach emphasizes understanding alien technological principles without direct implementation, a fine distinction that has nonetheless brought them under collegiate extremis scrutiny multiple times throughout their history. Lucius has specialized in adapting standard designs to unusual resource constraints, developing novel manufacturing techniques that produce functionally identical components through alternative processes. These variations create ongoing tension within the broader Mechanicus, with periodic theological disputes requiring intervention from senior authorities. The Fabricator General occasionally issues binding interpretations on particularly contentious issues, establishing Imperium-wide standards for specific technologies or research approaches. In extreme cases, forge worlds that deviate too significantly from established doctrine may face censure, ranging from trade restrictions to military intervention by Mechanicus forces from compliant forge worlds. Beyond the institutional boundaries of the Adeptus Mechanicus, true Hirteks operate in the shadows of the Imperium, pursuing technological innovation without regard for Mechanicus restrictions. These rogue tech priests range from idealistic innovators believing they serve humanity's best interests to corrupt individuals exploiting forbidden technology for personal gain. Some establish hidden workshops in the underhives of imperial worlds, while others seek refuge in the lawless regions of the galaxy, where imperial authority holds minimal sway. The most dangerous Hirteks often find patronage among the Imperium's enemies. The Dark Mechanicum, those tech priests who sided with Horus during his rebellion and subsequently fled to the Eye of Terror, actively recruits promising Hirteks, offering access to warp-tainted technological knowledge beyond anything available in the Imperium. Wealthy planetary governors or rogue traders might employ Hirteks to develop specialized equipment providing advantages over their rivals, shielding these technological criminals from Mechanicus justice through wealth and political connections. Hirtek innovations occasionally demonstrate genuine utility despite their forbidden status. Improved power distribution systems, more efficient life support technologies, and enhanced communication methods have all emerged from unauthorized experimentation. When such innovations are discovered, the collegiate extremis faces difficult decisions regarding their disposition. Destroying genuinely useful technology seems counterproductive, yet allowing heretical innovation to benefit its creators would encourage further transgressions. The standard resolution involves confiscating the technology for evaluation, executing or mind scrubbing its creators, and potentially reintroducing purified versions of valuable innovations as rediscovered technology after appropriate theological examination and ritual sanctification. This process allows the Mechanicus to maintain doctrinal consistency while still benefiting from occasional useful developments emerging from heretical sources. For individual tech priests within the Mechanicus hierarchy, navigating the boundaries between permitted research and tech heresy requires constant vigilance. Even well-intentioned investigations can inadvertently cross into forbidden territory, particularly when working with poorly understood ancient technology or attempting to solve novel technical problems. Most forge worlds maintain internal review procedures for research projects, with designated theological advisors evaluating proposed work for potential doctrinal concerns before resources are committed. The most successful tech priests develop a nuanced understanding of where these boundaries lie, allowing them to pursue knowledge aggressively while remaining within permitted parameters. They learn to frame their work in terms of established precedents, drawing connections between their research and historical examples of sanctioned technology. They develop networks of like-minded colleagues who can provide unofficial feedback on potentially problematic approaches before formal review. Most importantly, they internalize the theological principles underlying tech heresy prohibitions, allowing them to anticipate and avoid problematic research directions before committing resources. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in the labyrinthine tunnels of the Noctis labyrinth, lies a secret so profound that only a handful of individuals across the entire Imperium know of its existence. This secret predates the Mechanicum, the Great Crusade, and even humanity's first stumbling steps toward the stars. It is the presence of a being of immense power, a Khatan shard known as the Void Dragon, and its connection to the foundations of the cult Mechanicus represents perhaps the most carefully guarded truth in the Adeptus Mechanicus's long history. The existence of this ancient entity was first theorized by radical tech archaeologists who noted peculiar patterns in early Mechanicum development. The speed with which the early tech priests mastered certain technological principles during the Age of Strife seemed improbable given the general collapse of human knowledge during that period. particularly in the fields of energy manipulation, quantum mechanics, and certain aspects of materials science. The Martian tech priests demonstrated understanding that appeared to emerge fully formed rather than developing through normal scientific progression. These anomalies might have been dismissed as fortunate rediscoveries of Dark Age technology, if not for the distinctive characteristics of the knowledge itself. The mathematical foundations underlying these early mechanicum innovations contained structural similarities to Zeno's technology that would not be encountered by humanity until thousands of years later. Specifically, they shared computational frameworks with Necron technology, the ancient race whose technological mastery remains unmatched even by humanity's peak achievements during the Dark Age of technology. The Noctis labyrinth itself offers physical evidence supporting these theories. Unlike other Martian geological formations, the labyrinth exhibits characteristics that defy natural explanation. The tunnel systems extend far deeper than any natural cave network should, reaching dozens of kilometers below the surface where they connect to chambers of clearly artificial origin. The material composition of these deepest chambers includes molecular structures impossible to create through any known human manufacturing process, with crystalline lattices that appear to manipulate fundamental forces in ways that even senior magi struggle to comprehend. Most telling are the energy patterns that sensitive equipment can detect emanating from the deepest sections of the labyrinth. These emissions fluctuate according to mathematical sequences that match no known natural phenomenon, but bear striking similarities to energy signatures detected around confirmed Necron tomb worlds. The patterns suggest the presence of incredibly advanced technology in a dormant or contained state, technology far beyond even the most advanced relics of the Dark Age. The true nature of what lies within these depths remains officially unacknowledged by Mechanicus authorities. The entire Noctis labyrinth has been designated a forbidden zone, with access restricted to the highest-ranking tech priests under the direct authority of the Fabricator General. Multiple layers of security surround the region, from conventional Skitarii patrols to sophisticated detection systems that monitor for unauthorized presence. The official explanation for these measures cites unstable geological conditions and hazardous ancient radiation, technical truths that conceal a far more significant reality. According to the most credible theories, what lies imprisoned beneath the Noctis labyrinth is not merely advanced technology, but an actual Khatan shard, a fragment of one of the star gods that once ruled over the Necron Empire. Specifically, the evidence points to a significant portion of the entity known as the Void Dragon, one of the most powerful Khatan to have ever existed. This being's mastery over technology and energy was unparalleled even among its godlike peers, making it particularly relevant to the technological development of Mars. The influence of this entity on early Martian technology appears to have been indirect rather than deliberate. During the Age of Strife, as Mars descended into technological barbarism, the first tech priests who would eventually found the Mechanicum reported experiencing visions and revelations that guided their understanding of complex technological principles. These experiences, documented in encrypted data vaults accessible only to the highest ranks of the Mechanicus hierarchy, describe dreams filled with mathematical formulas and technical schematics that solved problems the tech priests had been struggling to overcome. What makes these accounts particularly significant is their geographical distribution. The earliest and most detailed revelations were reported by tech priests operating in the vicinity of the Noctis labyrinth. As distance from this region increased, the frequency and clarity of such experiences diminished proportionally. This pattern suggests a form of psychic influence emanating from the labyrinth itself, an unconscious leakage of knowledge from the imprisoned entity rather than deliberate communication. The technological domains most heavily influenced by these revelations align precisely with the Void Dragon's known spheres of influence. Energy manipulation, particularly electromagnetic phenomena and plasma containment, featured prominently in early Mechanicum innovations. Materials science advanced rapidly, with Martian forged temples developing alloys and composite materials with properties that should have been beyond their theoretical understanding. Most significantly, the early tech priests demonstrated intuitive comprehension of machine behavior that laid the groundwork for the machine spirit concept, a theological interpretation of technology that bears uncomfortable similarities to how Necron technology incorporates aspects of consciousness. This influence raises profound questions about the foundations of Mechanicus theology. If the machine god concept developed partly through unconscious influence from a Xenos entity, what does this imply about the Omnissiah's true nature? The most radical scholars suggest that the machine god as understood by the Mechanicus might be nothing more than a human theological interpretation of the void dragon's presence, a comprehensible framework constructed around an incomprehensible alien consciousness. Such theories remain strictly heretical within Mechanicus doctrine. Official theology maintains that while the Omnissiah might have used various means to communicate knowledge to humanity, including psychic impressions, the underlying divine nature remains purely transcendent rather than alien. This interpretation allows the Mechanicus to acknowledge the anomalous knowledge sources while maintaining theological consistency with their established beliefs. The connection between the Emperor of Mankind and the Void Dragon adds another layer of complexity to this situation. According to highly classified records preserved by the Mechanicus's innermost circle, the Emperor confronted and subdued a powerful entity on ancient Terra during the medieval period of human history. This encounter, occurring in approximately the 11th or 12th century, took place in what would later be known as Libya, where the Emperor, appearing as an ordinary human knight, battled a great and terrible dragon that had been terrorizing the local population. The descriptions of this dragon match no known terrestrial creature, but align perfectly with accounts of Catan manifestations. The entity demonstrated control over weather patterns, caused technological devices of the period to malfunction in its presence, and could not be harmed by conventional weapons. The Emperor's victory over this being reportedly involved forces beyond conventional understanding, with witnesses describing light that was not light and sounds that spoke directly to the soul. Following this victory, historical records fall silent on the dragon's fate. However, Mechanicus scholars note that this period coincides with a significant gap in the Emperor's known activities on Terra, a span of several decades where his movements cannot be accounted for through any surviving historical documentation. The theory that has gained the most acceptance among those aware of these events suggests that the Emperor transported the subdued entity to Mars, where he constructed the containment systems within the Noctis labyrinth to imprison it. The timing of this imprisonment would explain several otherwise puzzling aspects of Martian development. The first Proto-Mechanicum cults emerged on Mars approximately 2 centuries after the Emperor's battle with the dragon, sufficient time for the imprisoned entity's unconscious influence to begin affecting the planet's technological development. The geographical focus of early technological advancement around the Noctis region aligns with this timeline, as does the specific nature of the innovations that characterized early Mechanicum technology. If this theory is correct, it suggests an extraordinary level of foresight on the Emperor's part. By imprisoning the Void Dragon on Mars rather than destroying it, if such destruction was even possible, the Emperor may have deliberately created conditions that would eventually give rise to the Mechanicum. This technological priesthood would later provide the manufacturing capabilities and technical expertise essential for the Great Crusade and the foundation of the Imperium itself. The Emperor's apparent willingness to allow the Mechanicum to develop its religious characteristics, despite his implementation of the secular imperial truth elsewhere, further supports the theory that he intended the Void Dragon's influence to shape Martian development along specific lines. The containment systems holding the Void Dragon represent technology far beyond even the Mechanicus's current understanding. The deepest chambers of the Noctis labyrinth contain structures that appear to manipulate reality itself, creating overlapping fields that exist partially outside normal space-time. These systems bear no manufacturing marks or identifiable components that would allow tech priests to reverse engineer their function. Their operation appears to be self-sustaining, drawing energy from dimensional interfaces that have remained stable for over 10,000 years without apparent maintenance. The few tech priests permitted to study these systems report that their machine spirits demonstrate behavior unlike anything encountered elsewhere. Rather than the semi-sentient responsiveness typical of complex Imperial technology, these systems exhibit what one observer described as negative consciousness, a presence defined by absence rather than presence, as if something is actively preventing awareness rather than generating it. This characteristic aligns with theoretical models of how one might contain a being of pure energy and consciousness like a katan, essentially creating a null space that negates its ability to interact with the physical universe. The security protocols surrounding the Noctis labyrinth have evolved over millennia to address both physical and information threats. Physical access to the region requires authorization codes that change according to cryptographic patterns known only to the Fabricator General and his most trusted advisors. Multiple layers of defensive systems protect the approach, from conventional weapons emplacements to more exotic technologies that distort perception and disable unauthorized augmetics. The most sensitive areas employ temporal distortion fields that make it impossible to maintain consistent movement toward restricted zones without proper authorization. Information security proves even more rigorous. All data regarding the labyrinth's true nature is stored in isolated cogitator systems with no external network connections. Tech priests granted access to this information undergo extensive mental conditioning to prevent unauthorized disclosure, with memory modification protocols implemented after each exposure to ensure that specific technical details fade from conscious recall while leaving general awareness intact. The most sensitive documents employ encryption algorithms derived from the containment technology itself, creating codes that can only be processed by cogitators physically located within the inner sanctums of the labyrinth. Despite these precautions, knowledge of the Void Dragon's existence has occasionally leaked beyond the intended circle of awareness. Throughout Mechanicus history, various tech priests have independently discovered evidence pointing toward the labyrinth's secret. Some have approached their superiors with their findings and been either elevated to positions where they could be properly informed or eliminated as security risks, depending on their assessed reliability. Others have pursued their investigations more discreetly, forming unofficial networks dedicated to uncovering the truth. One such network, calling itself the Disciples of the Dragon, emerged during the 32nd millennium. This group began as a legitimate research collective studying energy manipulation principles before their investigations led them to identify patterns in Mechanicus technological development that pointed toward the Noctis labyrinth. Rather than reporting their findings, they established a secret fellowship dedicated to what they believed was the true Omnissiah, the entity they had detected beneath Mars. Their activities remained undetected for nearly 3 centuries before a routine data audit revealed anomalous access patterns in historical archives. The collegiate extremis response was swift and comprehensive. The identified members of the Disciples were apprehended simultaneously across 4 Forge worlds, their research confiscated, and their associates subjected to intensive interrogation. What authorities discovered proved more concerning than expected. The Disciples had developed theoretical models of the containment systems that, while incomplete, demonstrated dangerous accuracy. More alarming, they had begun experiments attempting to establish communication with the imprisoned entity, believing it would impart greater technological understanding to worthy supplicants. The elimination of the Disciples was total. All identified members were mind scrubbed, their biological components recycled, and their augmetics ritually purified before reuse. Their research was atomically destroyed rather than preserved, as even the collegiate extremis deemed it too dangerous for storage. Security protocols around the Noctis labyrinth were comprehensively upgraded following this incident, with additional psychic monitoring systems implemented to detect attempted communication with the entity. This incident highlights the paradoxical relationship between the Mechanicus and the secret at its heart. The very technological intuition that makes the most brilliant tech priests valuable to the organization also makes them most likely to discern the patterns pointing toward the void dragon's existence. Those with the greatest capacity to advance the quest for knowledge are precisely those most likely to uncover the truth that might undermine the theological foundations of that quest. The thunderous footsteps of Belisarius Cawl echo through the corridors of the Imperium's history like those of a titan across a battlefield. Standing as the most controversial and influential archmagos of the last 10 millennia, Cawl represents both the greatest hope and the most profound theological challenge the Adeptus Mechanicus has faced since the Horus Heresy. His work has fundamentally altered the course of imperial history, yet his methods have strained the very fabric of Mechanicus doctrine to its breaking point. Cawl's origins remain deliberately obscured, with conflicting records suggesting he may have been active as early as the Great Crusade. What remains uncontested is his emergence as a dominant force within the Mechanicus following the 13th Black Crusade and the formation of the Great Rift. His most significant contribution, the Primaris Space Marine Project, represents technological innovation on a scale unseen for millennia, combining genetic manipulation, materials science, and weapons development into a comprehensive enhancement of humanity's greatest warriors. The Primaris project began in secret during the 32nd millennium, commissioned directly by Guilliman before his mortal wounding by Fulgrim. Recognizing the limitations of the original Astartes template and foreseeing the Imperium's need for enhanced defenders, Guilliman provided Cawl with genetic material from all 20 Space Marine Primarchs and instructions to improve upon the Emperor's work. This directive itself constituted potential tech heresy of the highest order, improving upon the Emperor's designs rather than merely preserving them. For 10,000 years, Cawl worked in carefully concealed facilities spread across multiple star systems. He developed 3 new implanted organs for the Primaris Marines: the sinew coils that provide enhanced strength, the Magnificat that improves all existing organ functions, and the Belisarian furnace that can temporarily restore a gravely wounded Primaris to fighting capability. These additions, combined with refined versions of the original gene seed organs, produce Space Marines significantly larger, stronger, and more resilient than their predecessors. Beyond the biological enhancements, Cawl developed entirely new equipment for these warriors. The Mark X Tacticus armor improved upon all previous Space Marine power armor designs, incorporating enhanced protection, mobility, and life support systems. The bolt rifle replaced the venerable bolter with a longer-ranged, more accurate alternative. Plasma incinerators solved the notorious stability issues that had plagued plasma weapons for millennia. Each innovation represented significant technological advancement rather than mere refinement of existing designs. The theological implications of these developments sent shockwaves through the Mechanicus hierarchy. Cawl had not merely recovered lost technology, the sanctioned form of technological advancement, but had genuinely innovated. He had taken existing designs, identified their limitations, and engineered solutions that surpassed the original specifications. More troublingly, he had done so with the most sacred of all Imperial technology, the Emperor's own work on the Space Marines. When Guilliman returned from his near-death stasis in the 42nd millennium, his endorsement of Cawl's work prevented immediate censure from the Mechanicus leadership. The Primarch's authority as Imperial Regent, combined with the desperate strategic situation following the formation of the Great Rift, created practical imperatives that temporarily overrode theological concerns. The Primaris Space Marines were needed, regardless of how they had been created, and their obvious effectiveness on the battlefield silenced many potential critics. Yet beneath this pragmatic acceptance, fundamental questions began to circulate through the noospheric networks of forge worlds across the Imperium. If innovation of this magnitude could be sanctioned due to necessity, what remained of the traditional prohibitions against technological development? If improving upon the Emperor's designs was permitted in one domain, what theological justification remained for prohibiting it in others? The foundations of Mechanicus conservatism, established over 10 millennia of tradition, faced their greatest challenge not from external enemies but from within. Call's innovations extended far beyond the Primaris project. His magnum opus, the Call Inferior, represents an artificial intelligence system that skirts the very edge of tech heresy. While officially classified as an extremely sophisticated cogitator network rather than true AI, the Inferior demonstrates capabilities that trouble orthodox tech priests. Its ability to predict Call's responses to complex questions with near-perfect accuracy suggests a level of cognitive modeling that approaches prohibited machine consciousness. The Archmagos has also pioneered new applications of ancient technology, particularly in his personal weaponry and augmentations. His solar atomizer repurposes Dark Age principles to create a weapon of devastating potential, while his mechanical body incorporates systems that blur the distinction between sanctified technology and forbidden innovation. Most concerning to traditionalists, Call has demonstrated willingness to study and adapt Xeno's technology when it serves his purposes, a practice explicitly prohibited by orthodox Mechanicus doctrine. These radical approaches have attracted both devoted followers and implacable enemies within the Mechanicus hierarchy. Younger tech priests, particularly those who have witnessed the Imperium's desperate struggles following the Great Rift, increasingly view Call's pragmatism as necessary for survival. They argue that the quest for knowledge cannot be fulfilled through mere preservation when existential threats demand new solutions. The traditional approach, they suggest, has failed to prevent the Imperium's gradual technological regression over 10 millennia. Opposing this progressive faction stands an equally determined traditionalist bloc, centered primarily on Mars itself and other ancient Forge worlds. These tech priests view Call's work as dangerous deviation from the Omnissiah's plan, risking the same catastrophic outcomes that resulted from unbridled innovation during the Dark Age of technology. They point to the Mechanicus' survival through 10,000 years of galactic turmoil as evidence that conservative technological policies provide long-term stability that radical innovation cannot guarantee. This ideological divide has manifested in practical policies across different Forge worlds. Styges 8 has embraced aspects of Call's approach, expanding their already liberal policies regarding the study of Xeno's technology. Their tech priests argue that understanding alien principles need not mean implementing them directly, a fine distinction that nevertheless allows significant expansion of their research parameters. Agrippina, facing constant threat from the forces of chaos emerging from the Cicatrix Maledictum, has adopted numerous Callian innovations out of sheer necessity, their traditional doctrines compromised by survival imperatives. In contrast, Mars itself has become the center of traditionalist resistance to Call's influence. The Fabricator General publicly maintains a position of cautious neutrality while quietly implementing policies that restrict the spread of Callian methodologies within Martian Forge temples. Access to data regarding the Primaris project remains tightly controlled, with information distributed on a need-to-know basis rather than incorporated into standard educational protocols. Research proposals that cite Call's work face additional scrutiny from theological compliance officers. The resurrection of Guilliman has further complicated this theological landscape. The Primarch's return from stasis, made possible through the combined application of Adeptus Mechanicus technology and Ildari healing abilities, presents a profound challenge to established doctrine. If Xeno's technology could restore a Primarch, one of the Emperor's direct creations, what does this imply about the Mechanicus' blanket prohibition on alien technological principles? Guilliman's subsequent alliance with Call has created an unprecedented political situation. For the first time since the Great Crusade, the Adeptus Mechanicus faces an imperial authority figure with both the technical knowledge to understand their work and the political power to demand compliance. The Primarch's pragmatic approach to governance has little patience for theological objections to necessary technological development, creating pressure for doctrinal evolution that many tech priests find deeply uncomfortable. This pressure has intensified as Guilliman has granted Call extraordinary resources and authority for specific projects. The Primarch's commission for Call to develop weapons specifically designed to combat the forces of chaos represents a direct challenge to traditional Mechanicus research limitations. By explicitly authorizing innovation in particular domains, Guilliman has created exceptions to established prohibitions that threaten to undermine the entire theological framework governing technological development. The schism between traditionalists and progressives has manifested in increasingly concrete forms as the 42nd millennium advances. Forge worlds have begun forming unofficial alliances based on shared technological philosophies, creating power blocks within the broader Mechanicus structure. Supply relationships, technical assistance, and data sharing increasingly follow ideological lines rather than traditional administrative boundaries. Some Forge worlds have even begun restricting access to their noospheric networks based on theological alignment, creating unprecedented information barriers within what was historically a unified, if hierarchical, knowledge base. These divisions have practical implications for the Imperium's military capabilities. Forge worlds that embrace Callian innovation produce more advanced equipment, but in smaller quantities as they adjust manufacturing processes to accommodate new designs. Traditionalist Forge worlds maintain higher production volumes of established patterns, but fail to incorporate improvements that could enhance battlefield effectiveness. The resulting equipment disparities create logistical challenges for Imperial forces receiving support from different Forge worlds, with compatibility issues between traditional and innovative systems requiring additional field modifications. For individual tech priests navigating this changing landscape, personal decisions regarding technological philosophy increasingly define their career trajectories. Those who align with progressive factions gain access to exciting research opportunities and potential advancement within Call's growing power structure, but risk finding themselves isolated from traditional knowledge repositories and political networks. Those who maintain traditionalist positions secure their standing within established hierarchies, but may find themselves working with increasingly obsolete methodologies as innovation accelerates elsewhere. The cicatrix maledictum itself has become a geographical manifestation of this ideological divide. Forge worlds in the Imperium Nihilus, the portion of the galaxy cut off from Terra's direct authority by the Great Rift, have generally embraced more pragmatic approaches to technology out of necessity. With supply lines severed and communication with Mars intermittent at best, these isolated Forge worlds have been forced to develop greater self-sufficiency and technological flexibility. Many have implemented Callian innovations without waiting for theological approval, creating de facto acceptance of progressive methodologies. In the Imperium Sanctus, closer to Terra and Mars, traditionalist positions remain stronger. Regular communication with Mechanicus central authorities allows closer doctrinal oversight, while more reliable supply networks reduce the pressure for self-sufficient innovation. Yet even here, the practical benefits of Callian technology have become increasingly difficult to ignore, particularly as Primaris Space Marines demonstrate their effectiveness against the Imperium's enemies. The future of the Adeptus Mechanicus likely lies not in total victory for either faction, but in an evolving synthesis of approaches. The most politically astute tech priests have begun developing theological frameworks that can accommodate limited innovation while maintaining core Mechanicus principles. These emerging doctrines typically emphasize intent and methodology rather than specific technological domains, permitting development that follows rigorous protocols and maintains proper reverence for the Omnissiah's wisdom, while still prohibiting reckless experimentation or innovation for its own sake. One such framework, gaining traction among moderate tech priests, reinterprets the quest for knowledge to include understanding of technological principles rather than merely preserving specific designs. This approach maintains the theological primacy of knowledge acquisition while creating space for applying that knowledge in new ways. By emphasizing that innovation based on thoroughly understood principles differs fundamentally from innovation that exceeds current comprehension, this doctrine creates a path for advancement that respects traditional caution without imposing absolute stagnation. The long-term implications of these theological shifts extend far beyond the Adeptus Mechanicus itself. For 10 millennia, the Imperium's technological foundation has remained relatively static, with innovation occurring at such glacial pace that most Imperial citizens would never witness significant technological change within their lifetime. If the progressive faction gains lasting influence, this pattern could fundamentally change, creating an Imperium where technological capabilities advance noticeably within generational timeframes. Such advancement would dramatically affect the Imperium's relationships with external powers. The Eldari, who have maintained technological superiority over humanity since the fall of the Dark Age of technology, might find that advantage gradually eroding. The Tiao, whose rapid technological development has allowed them to challenge Imperial forces despite their youth as a stellar power, could face an Imperium capable of matching their innovation rate. Most significantly, the forces of chaos, which have relied on technological stagnation to maintain the effectiveness of their ancient knowledge of Imperial systems, would confront an increasingly unfamiliar technological landscape. Within the Imperium, changing Mechanicus doctrine would reshape relationships between the tech priesthood and other Imperial institutions. The Adeptus Astartes, already experiencing unprecedented change through the Primaris project, would likely develop closer ties with progressive Mechanicus factions capable of supporting their enhanced capabilities. The Imperial Navy, perpetually seeking improved void ship designs to maintain superiority across the galaxy's contested shipping lanes, would find willing partners in tech priests embracing controlled innovation. Even the ecclesiarchy might adapt its theological positions to accommodate a more dynamic technological environment, perhaps emphasizing the Emperor's role as the greatest innovator in human history. For now, the Adeptus Mechanicus stands at a crossroads unprecedented in its 10,000-year history. The children of the Omnissiah face fundamental questions about their purpose, their methods, and their understanding of the machine god's will. In the forges of Mars and 1,000 worlds beyond, tech priests debate, calculate, and pray for guidance as they determine what form their quest for knowledge will take in humanity's darkest hour. The red dust of Mars continues to conceal ancient secrets, but new knowledge emerges from the Mechanicus' tireless efforts. Whether through rediscovery of lost technology or carefully managed innovation, the tech priests advance the Omnissiah's work across the stars. In workshops illuminated by the glow of sacred machinery, amid the chanting of binary prayers and the hum of power fields, the future of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and perhaps of humanity itself, takes shape beneath robes of deepest red and the watchful gaze of mechanical eyes.